Okay. I just remember you had said you wanted to put on the list, but we didn't think there was a specific place that it was just we were putting all of them on. So anyway, I think you're good, Andrew. I don't know of any issues.
I think so. Yeah, we have. Yeah.
About as healthy of a lunch as I had.
Councilmember Bradshaw. Nice to see you. Yeah. Fun day. Yeah, just here because there's one funding item that's kind of on the list, which is the support funding for the Transportation Managed Connection Program. WFRC. So just if there's any questions about it, I want to be helpful. Yeah, thanks. Hi. I'm just here in case there were any questions about the matching money that the county contributes to our joint transportation managed connection program. The $300,000 where we support the communities in their planning activities and dealing with growth challenges. And I think we've talked about this before. It's a great program, but I'm happy if I don't have to say anything funding, but I'm happy to help in any way I can. Okay? Got it. Thanks.
You start to which is your request. The guardrails.
I know. First, they'll be next to last. You and D need to switch plates. I don't. I just noticed it now.
I'm excited about that. The only program that I tentative to read, but I'm going to talk about resources. That one, like, that's game changing.
Various shades of gray.
I know, and I think
There we go. All right. Thank you for your patience as we get rolling
Madam
again
Chair,
here.
Madam Chair, Jim Bradley.
Is Dee coming?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you and the other council members for accommodating my request. It worked out. I can hear you and I can talk to you. So thank you.
Well, fabulous. We're glad to be able to hear from you, Jim. All right. We're going to go back to our business, and we're going to go back to item 4.3. That is where we left off. So I'll turn the time back over to Amy, and we'll get started.
Thank you. Well, Jim, I'll just say it was actually good that you had us wait, because in that time, we were able to chat with some of the other issues people wanted to include in this motion and get a copy of the legislative intent that we are looking to roll back. And so I think we're good now. I'm going to just make one motion with those changes incorporated. So I move that we approve the 2 new council staff job descriptions in substantially the form that we discussed today. Adding in the director position that they assist the executive committee as needed, and change 6 years to 2 years for each of the positions, and instruct council staff to work with county staff, including HR, to finalize them as soon as possible. I also move that the council proceed with hiring the council office director position once the job description is finalized and can be posted, and that the council establish a goal of selecting a person for the position no later than December 17th. I also move that the council approve the proposed amendments to the council internal policy on staff to be made effective January 1st, 2025. And I move that the council rescind the legislative intent concerning council staff approved June 25th, 2024.
I will second that.
I'll make a substitute.
Go ahead.
I move that we defer making any permanent hiring decisions such as this with a profound impact on the 2025 council as a matter of a peaceful transition of power. The new council should be the ones that make those decisions and have those decisions instead of members that are leaving this council.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that. And I just wanted to make a comment. When I was a mayor-elect in South Jordan City, I'd run against an incumbent mayor. I started to build a relationship with the city manager. And the council may have had some issues with that city manager, but the outgoing mayor, who had been defeated electorally, along with 2 or 3 outgoing council members, fired the city manager. It was an act of aggression, I felt, and I also felt it was discourteous. I don't know if this is an exact parallel to that situation, but I definitely agree with Councilmember Stewart that you should, out of courtesy, leave these kind of decisions where especially we have a change of 3 council members. It seems the right thing to defer the vote until they're able to weigh in. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I respond to that?
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, the 4 of those 5 positions, as per the motion last week, that is the case. That new council will make those caucus senior advisor position decisions. And so I think we've got that taken care of. Sounds like the one in question would be the council office director. My thinking on this is we may have current staffers who would be interested in both positions. And so best to get the hiring of the office director position out of the way initially, so it still gives the caucuses time to make hiring decisions for the other 4 positions before the end of the year. I think it's far more disruptive if we put this off another month, and then meanwhile people are wondering if they have a job and what's going to happen. And I think we need to do this sooner rather than later. And so because those 4 will be decided by the new council, I think it makes sense to at least move forward with the one that will help provide some finality for several of those candidates on what will be happening in that position.
Shelton.
Comment to that. Here's the thing. We don't even know who the chair is going to be next year. And this job is primarily supporting the chair. I think the chair, for me personally, if this continues as it is, I'm going to weigh more heavily on the decisions of who the chair is next year and what their decisions are as it relates to that position, since it directly supports them. That decision will not be made until the new year.
May I counter?
Go ahead.
Actually, I believe that because there's not a formal position made on who the chair is, the caucuses will still be able to get together in December and figure out who they want for leadership next year. And so I think we can get that answered before any of the positions are hired.
But until the motion is made, we do not, it's not set in stone.
Go ahead.
I would just want to make sure I understand the substitute motion. Sheldon, is it that approving the job descriptions and the underlying motion, but that the hiring decisions would be made by the new caucus
By
in the new year?
By the new council. I'm not speaking to the
council,
validity of the positions, just
Okay.
to the hiring of the positions, that those decisions should be made in a formal meeting with all members that are going to be part of the group that are being supported by these positions. And I don't think that the votes of Ann, Jim, and Dave should be a part of that decision.
But did your motions talk about the job description approval?
I just said
itself?
deferring permanent hiring.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Could I ask a potential legal question?
Yes, go ahead.
Would there be anything that would preclude this council from including the new members in the closed session as it relates to the deliberations of who the council wants to hire for that role?
The answer to that question, I believe, is no. They could be invited in and be involved. The staff management plan, though, which is part of the backup material that would be, well, I'll even take a step back. We have an existing staff plan. The amended version would also include this language, presumes that for central staff positions, as has long been the practice, the council makes a decision. And there's only one council at a time. I mean, that's the reality. And so at whatever point in time that decision would be made to offer a job position to a central staff person, your internal policy, both as it exists now and as it would be proposed in this set of changes, would presume that the council selects those persons, not council members elect.
Amy, I'm curious if what is the thought around, is it just a timing issue that we feel like we need to get that done this month?
Yeah, exactly. I have no problem with who makes the decisions on these, and I can see Sheldon's point that it does make sense to have the future council weigh in on this. My concern is right now we got some unrest in the council office. People are wondering, what's going to happen, and the sooner we can put that to bed, the better, and the sooner we can have these positions ready to roll January 6th. When, people are sworn in and we're off and running, the less disruption that we have. So if there's a way that we can have the new council even be part of that closed meeting as we interview people and give their input, and, I would hope that we could come to some consensus there with this council. I mean, I'm all for that. It really, truly is about just getting this done quickly so that we have less disruption in the office.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Jim, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just a perspective on this as well, that indeed the three leaving members of the council, that is not unusual. Every 2 years you have the potential of three people leaving. So there's no convenient time in that regard in terms of the timing of who may or may not be new to the council. But don't let it be lost that the three members who are leaving have institutional knowledge of how the council works, where our shortcomings are and where our strengths are. And I think that their perspective on this may be more valuable than three new members coming to the council, not really having that background and that experience. So I think that is a plus that three of us can weigh in on this and do so objectively because we have nothing to gain or lose. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ann.
I think we did a lot of deliberation on this, a lot of discussion about timing. And the point was that one of the points was we had current policy advisors that might want to apply for this position. And so by filling this position and putting that in a firm situation. It would allow the policy advisors that possibly had not achieved that position to be able to come back in and apply for the policy advisor position. So it was kind of like, let's get this settled, get a person here, and that leaves the other policy advisors free to apply for the other position.
If I can make one more comment, I mean, I guess what we could do, because we can fill the 4 with the new council next month before they're sworn in, since it's a caucus decision instead of the full council decision. I mean, we could hire the 4 senior advisors first and then wait until January to, interview and hire the aide to the chair, but I think, or the office director, but I think to Ann's point, that is hard. I think our staff would all prefer the other way around. So,
Well, it's up to the will of the council, so, and it's up to those who are sitting right now. So,
Mitch,
I was just gonna say, before we vote, can we have the substitute motion restated, just so
Yes,
there's
please.
clarity?
yeah, so I move that we defer making permanent hiring decisions such as this with a profound impact on the 2025 council as a matter of a peaceful transition of power and allowing the new council members the proper input on the individuals that will support them.
and what are you going to defer it to? Is there a date that you're?
Yeah, I would just say that we give them their first meeting to allow to be sworn in, and then we make that decision the very next meeting. So it'd be what I think is that the 11th. I don't have a calendar in my head right now. So it's the 6th that they'd be sworn in, and then we would be the 13th. So it'd be the 13th. So the decision would be made on the 13th.
it's the 7th.
I think it's
Tuesday.
Or
The 7th
I don't
is
have
the
my
next
dates all right.
Tuesday meeting. The 7th is the next meeting.
So 7th and then the 14th, whatever the second week of January is.
They're sworn in on a Monday, so the next meeting would be the next day.
It'll be the first meeting of the year, and the first day after the swearing in is the 7th.
I mean, just allow them to get their feet wet, and then the week I'm
you're-
just saying
you're
the
suggesting
second
the
week.
14th,
Yeah,
okay.
give them the time to get in, get settled, get through their celebratory things with their family and whoever, and then make the decisions the following week.
Okay.
And that's not bad.
So how does that affect those who lose their job January 1st?
How does it affect them?
Yes.
Well, if the council doesn't have that position hired, it's just a position that won't be hired. I mean, that's the reality. That based on the council's action last week, the 9 FTEs associated with the senior policy advisor position have been eliminated. They'll be replaced by 5 new positions, 4 new senior advisor positions, and 1 council office director position, which is a central staff position. Whether or not current incumbents are selected, I think is a question of the hiring process, and whether they have a lapse in service is obviously a possibility if the council waits until the second week of January to fill that position, and it is an incumbent, but that's a lot of forecasting and unknowns. Certainly that's in your discretion if you approve it.
If there's a lapse in service according to the actual motion that we have, does that mean they all get stipends as they go out the door and then we rehire? I mean, is that how that works?
Well, the language that the council approved last week suggested that individuals whose term, the individual who appointed them, if their term of office is not expiring.
Sure.
So in other words, they would have continued, and they're not hired within the county prior to February 1st of next year, would be eligible for severance if it were agreed
Was it
upon.
February 1st or January 1st?
It was
'Cause I thought
February 1st.
It was February 1st, okay.
Sorry.
So they have the ability to continue to work through January while these decisions are made.
I think only individuals who have a position, I think you would need to be hired in order to continue, to quote unquote, continue working.
So-
And the 9 positions associated with senior, to be clear, if the council's budgetary decision made last week is adopted, would be gone. Those positions end on December 31st.
Right.
Madam Chair, I
Yes,
think
go ahead.
from an HR perspective, since I oversee HR, I would just say the decision's yours, but there would, assuming there will be a rollover from council members, some of them, there would be a gap. and that may impact benefits. So I think
That's my concern,
I
yes.
think you need to kind of maybe have Sharon weigh in or whatever on that kind of gap period, what it would mean
She here
to
right now?
exit out at the end of the year and be
Madam
hired
Chair,
a couple of
can I-
weeks later.
Hold on.
Sorry, I
Let's
didn't
go
mean to
here first. Let's go to Arlen, then Dean.
Well, I just was going to say, I'm actually very sympathetic to the motion that Sheldon has made. I think though that we can potentially work it out. I believe fully that the new members should be involved in that hiring process, and I think we should contact them today and make sure they're available for any scheduled interviews. I think going through that process, if it becomes clear that there might be a different decision made, then I think we all just need to accept that reality and accept their input. I know there's only one council at a time, but I don't see why we couldn't get their input in the process, because I think that it'll become clear through the process if it would result in a different decision than maybe this council would make independent of their voices. So I think it would just be my commitment to you, Sheldon, that we incorporate them into the hiring process with this council, and give their comments and consideration the due weight it deserves, because just as this council could hire, a new council could immediately fire. So I don't think we need to be cognizant of that and set ourselves up on a timeline of success. It sounds like there is some ease to doing it this month, but I think they should be part of the decision.
Madam Chair, would it be appropriate, can I amend my motion to include that, or is his motion live on the table and I
Well,
can't?
his
amend?
motion is live right now unless he
Okay.
takes, because his actually moves the whole decision into January,
But I.
which is not a friendly amendment.
Okay.
So
I'll
we would
leave
have to
them.
vote on that one first, and then we have to go back unless he's willing to allow you to do that, then that's a different scenario.
I'll just wait and then if we come back to it, I'll. amend it.
Yeah, so if I can just comment to what Arlen said, the very thing that you said, I understand. That council could also make the decision, this is why I'm concerned, to overturn the removal of funding. They could refund these positions in January. There's nothing stopping the council from doing that. You can amend the budget at any time with a motion of 5 members of the council.
Well, you still have to have, there's more to it than just that, but yes.
But yes, the council can still refund the positions. And that's something that concerns me as well, is that there may be concerns among those members that, hey, this is not the course I want. I ran on these reasons, just like I stated last week. I ran on the reasons that I would have an individual supporting me. That is something that council can do. And so I would hate to hire somebody and then find out that council is not happy with that individual, not happy with that decision, and decides to refund SPAs. And what does that person do if that position gets defunded?
I would also like to get the question answered from HR specifically, personally, on the break in benefits and stuff for staff.
Well, you might need a second for us to locate Sharon.
Yeah.
Are you in process?
Can we put this on pause and move on to something else and come
Yeah,
back
Darren's
to it to
working
get
on
that
it.
answered?
Madam Chair, I'll call the question on this vote.
Call the question? Okay, we'll call the question then. All right, question's been called. So all in favor on this motion?
This is the substitute.
Substitute motion, yep. To move this to the January 14th to be able to make the decision then. Can you do a roll call vote on this one? We'll need that.
Councilmember Harrison?
Well, I know the question's been called, but I just want to explain my no vote is because I'm concerned about the benefits gap and what that could mean for people's insurance and so forth. So I don't feel comfortable without the added information, so no.
Councilmember Alvord?
Aye.
Councilmember Granado?
No.
Councilmember Bradshaw?
Nay.
Councilmember Theodore?
Nay.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Winder Newton?
No.
Councilmember Bradley?
No.
Councilmember Stringham?
No, yes. Okay, that's 3-6, that passes. Fails, I mean.
Madam Chair, since we're going back to my original motion, I'd like to amend it to include that the decision on these positions include the 2025 new council members as well, as we weigh in.
And just one slight, in talking with Ralph about that, we need to make sure that prior to that happening, those individuals sign on in an employment relationship with the county.
Okay.
I believe that's already in the process of occurring for at least 2 of them, hopefully all 3 of them. But that should take place before they're in the closed session.
Okay,
Fabulous.
great, thank you.
And I apologize, I was missing last week, but just point of clarification, is this council contemplating retaining some of the 9? Because there's a real strong loyalty built into the council member they've been serving for however many years. And to now change that relationship to a shared relationship, I think is going to be proved to be pretty problematic for the group. There's going to be interests of one district that don't align with the interests of another district. And is that loyalty going to be challenged? Hey, I made sure you kept your job here at the county. You owe me your job, so you better stay loyal to district whatever. I would recommend, if you're really going to do this, you got to clean slate it. You got to bring in all new people, because you're gonna put the minority, whether they're the freshmen or someone else, at a real disadvantage coming into the council office.
Go
I
ahead,
think these
Ann.
people are professional. We asked Mitch to do exactly the same thing. We asked Mitch to give us opinions. He gives opinions. He keeps them private to the council member that he is working with, and he is able to give exact information based on the question. And I would assume that people we would hire would have enough professionalism to understand the job description and perform accordingly.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Amy.
I just, since you missed last week, so the plan is to have a central staffer that answers to the whole council, and then 2 senior advisors per caucus that is hired by the caucus. So those caucus members would vote, and the policy that we have today kind of outlines that piece. And I mean, to your point, Dave, I mean, there may be some who decide, yeah, that's not going to work to have somebody else's policy advisor work for me. And there may be others who go, gosh, that institutional knowledge and what they've learned in the time they've been there is, but I agree with Ann. I think, I mean, hopefully we all have good judgment on hiring professionals who can do this well. And I look forward to having 2 people in that I can go to for policy advice, so.
Sheldon.
I think the reference to Mitch is a bad reference. Mitch actually, because of his position as an attorney and because he's subject to certain things related to law, has a different level that he's bound to. Like if he breaks confidence between me and him with any of you, he can face problems at the bar. Whereas another member that is one of our policy advisors does not have that same requirement. There is nothing binding them from keeping those confidences.
It was not the legality I was referring to. It was the professionalism of working with a member, answering the questions that the member asks specifically, and being able to work with a number of different members. It's got nothing to do with the legality.
Yeah, I'm just talking that if they were to do that, there's nothing that's holding them accountable other than the people that hire them. There is nothing that holds anybody accountable to me breaking my confidences and to not spend the time that's necessary to support me in the functions. That distinction is not clear. So
I'm going to ask a quick question. Sharon is here now, and I don't want to take too much of her time. Do you mind answering the question that we just had? I'd still like the question
I gave
answered.
her my understanding of the question, but
Okay.
you may need to read.
So the question was raised, if we choose not to hire before January 1st and we instead hire January 14th, and so all the jobs end in the council office that are for those who are leaving January 1st, and some might be hired back on January 14th. What does that do to an employee and their benefits and their status?
Right. So there would be a gap. What happens is it's kind of a funny time to be ending your employment and restarting your employment in the same month, but there would be a gap, a couple of weeks, whatever that timeframe is. So that would get reported to URS, that would get reported to all of the benefit carriers, right, that their employment ended. So all of their benefits, they actually end the end of the month when someone's terminated, not the day of. So they actually continue.
But the 31st is the termination date, so would they end December 31st because it's with the budget year?
So, yeah, so if they end in December, then they would have a benefits gap,
Okay.
right? So for those couple of weeks, unless they elected COBRA, they wouldn't have benefits coverage. So that presents, a challenge for people.
So can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Because one of the things the motion did last week is it provided them severance according to policy. Does the policy not provide ongoing benefits during the severance period?
No, severance is purely payout of wages. They could elect COBRA. You could pay them more severance so that they could use those dollars.
So the
elect
current county
COBRA,
policy
pay
does
for
not
COBRA.
afford that, though.
No.
Go ahead. That's not a question about this. Okay, any other questions for Sharon? Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate it. That's helpful.
I just had a thought on what you said, Dave, and I hear you, but I also feel like I think we have really great people on our staff, and I feel like one of the concerns I've had with all this is that they're feeling unappreciated. They're feeling like their work doesn't matter. I'm talking about our council staff, and I trust, I think all of our SPAs have incredible talent. They're really smart. They're really sharp. And I think the argument of not having anyone come back is concerning to me, because I think that just adds to the stress and unrest that people are already feeling. And I think we have a ton of talent here. And my concern with some of this discussion is that they're not feeling like they're valued and they're not feeling like they're trusted. And so I would argue against a clean slate model, because I think that just adds insult to injury and stress.
All right, I'm going to call the question now. Let's go ahead and vote. Will you do a roll call vote?
Councilmember Stewart,
No.
Councilmember Bradley,
Yes.
Councilmember Bradshaw,
Aye.
Councilmember Theodore,
Aye.
Councilmember Granado,
Aye.
Councilmember Winder Newton,
Aye.
Councilmember Alvord,
Nay.
Councilmember Harrison,
Yes.
Councilmember Stringham,
Yes. Okay, that passes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to ask a quick question related but kind of unrelated. There are definitely a couple policy advisors who the term of their council member is ending, and I don't think plan to apply or remain a part of the council staff going forward. And I think there remains question, though, do they continue to work through January 6th or do they leave January 1st? And how have we handled that in past years? I know that the swearing in is few days later than I can ever remember it being, but I think that's an issue that we might need to resolve on how those 6 days work.
Well, yes, and potentially there may be solutions. I don't know if it's possible to bring people on in a temporary basis, if there's a desire to do that, but the positions themselves will be eliminated if the council adopts a final budget doing so effective December 31st. So those individuals would not have continuing employment the first 5 days of January of next year.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, is that solely dependent on the motion from last week? Could that be amended for the individuals in that situation, or is that because of the budgetary decision related to that?
That's right. The elimination of the full-time employee, there wouldn't be a slot.
If you were to adjust that date from January 1st to January 6th or the end of the year, you could then adjust that amount and they would get paid through the 6th, correct?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's even possible.
Madam Chair, can I, well, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I don't know, it would be, I would say at a minimum artful to approve FTEs for 5 days of a calendar year. Just candidly, I don't know that that's ever been done before. And then to have an elimination baked in, I'm not sure how that would quite work, given the obligations we have to publish a final budget.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Amy, and then if we need to, Sharon, be ready on deck.
So our motion last week says that the caucuses will let, that will make the decision on their policy or their senior advisors by January 1st. So we should be good, because if here's how I envision this process is if we can get this job posting finalized in the next day, get it posted online, take resumes or whatever we want to do for the next week on it. This is for the office director position. Have a process where maybe our central staff, Mitch and Dave and can help sort through those. And then we interview people on the 17th and make a decision that day. Then that gives gives each caucus for 2025 time to still, and in the meantime, we can be taking applications or resumes for people interested in the senior policy advisor position too. So then that caucus can immediately convene after that and decide who they want. I think we're going to be able to do that and meet the January 1st deadline, and we won't have any of the benefits issues that we're talking about.
Okay, Sharon, I've got a couple questions for you really quickly because this might hinge on some of this.
Can't hire them.
So typically when we close out a year with the council, we as a group serve until the new people are sworn in. Is that correct? So our pay goes through the day that those people are sworn in. Is that also true for their senior policy advisors?
Yes.
So right now we have some people who would end up getting stipend whose pay won't go to the January 6th. They would be ending in January 1st according to this December 31st, correct? And then we also have those, unless they're hired on January 1st, that could become an issue. Do I have that correctly?
Right.
All right. All right. And I guess my question is there a way for them to fill their full year to January 6th and then stipend them, where that was something we would have normally done? Or do we just cut it off at December 31st? And do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and Mitch mentioned this, like the cleaner way, if you want those people to work and be paid for those 6 days, would be to hire them as temporary staff, because you don't have to have an allocated budgeted position for that. So you could hire them as temporary staff for that amount of time. But
Okay. Or we could also include that amount in the stipend then.
yes, that would be another
Okay.
approach.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
So this actually, if I may, Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
this information, though, in light of my motion earlier, defeats the purpose of the discussion earlier, which created people to shift because people would lose budget. But now we're hearing this other motion that's available. So I feel like my motion was ultimately sabotaged because of the way that the wording is because we were concerned about the benefits carrying over into the new month. But if we had allowed people to continue until January 6th, they get the first day of work, which carries their benefits through the end of the month, which then would allow the time for those decisions to be made. Once again, the points I made last week stand. I'm just going to reference what I said last week.
So right now, the end date in the current legislative intent is December 31st. If that had been extended to January 1st, that would have been a different scenario.
Yeah, it would have been a different scenario because every person would have carried benefits.
I don't think any of us understood that. We also took that vote on your motion before we got this information because the vote was called.
Yeah,
So,
again.
May I ask, would that have changed anybody's vote? I mean, I'm curious, just straw polling it, would that information, because I'd rather make sure we're doing this in good.
I know it would have changed yours, Suzanne, based on your statement.
So Suzanne, maybe, but it still would have, yeah, or 6-3 even without yours. It passed 7-2. So I,
6-3.
It was
No, it was 6-3.
It was 6-3.
because you voted.
I voted
no.
with them.
Okay, so yeah, it still would have been 5-4.
It would have been,
Well, but we don't know if Arlen would have changed.
Well,
Because I think, Arlen, your concern was the same thing, wasn't it?
yeah, I mean, but I'm struggling overall. I know that there was a reason we put December 31st in the original motion, because this is all set up as a budgetary decision for FY25. So it's not as simple as just going 1 month into the new budget year, because then you have to fund those FTEs for FY25 and then eliminate them. And temp staff is not eligible for benefits regardless. So it doesn't seem to me, in terms to me, our budgetary impact for the restructure, that we can extend those FTEs into FY25 from what I have understood the explanation to be.
If I could.
go ahead.
I mean, we're talking about a $2 billion budget here. This is a drop in the bucket. Cobra's probably $1,500 a month for these employees if we talk the high end, maybe a little higher. $2,000, $18,000 to make the right decision on a $2 billion budget. That's my concern here. To make the right decision, we're arguing over $18,000 when the council could have the will to change the will of what happened. We have lame duck members that voted on this in that majority.
Isn't it the right decision according to Sheldon?
It's not according to Sheldon, man. Thank you. But it's not. What this is doing the right thing for the people that we represent. We're arguing about a $2 billion budget. The legislative authority with the budget sits in this office, and we've cut our staff down that's facilitate our ability to adequately administer this budget. That's what I'm talking about here. My argument last week stands. We have an office, we have an obligation. In our oath, when we took our oath, we said that we would take care and we'd look out for the interests of the people that we represent. And I don't see anywhere else where anybody else is willing to cut, but yet we're willing to cut our own head off to despite ourselves. These staff members are the ones that support us during these budget processes, and that's our number one duty, is tied to the budget.
Madam Chair, I have comments at the appropriate time.
Okay. Let me make sure that the council has had a chance to all speak at this point. Anybody online? I think, Jim, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, though.
Okay, just want to make sure. No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Okay, go ahead. Mary.
I just want to share, I am going to make some comments expressing my opinion on this matter, and I'll explain why in a minute. I've had people reach out, and I've been clear with them why I favor this shift. And I just want to take a second to share, because I think it is relevant as we look at really sending certainty to our appointed employees about their future. So I favor anything that would allow the dust to settle sooner than later, first of all. But more importantly, you'll all, those of you who were around when I served on the council, there were initiatives over time to make change to the system. And while I think it was well-intentioned by the commission when they moved over to this form of government, I favor more of a central staff model. And there are various reasons, and I won't take too much time on those, but I generally think that if you eliminate the one-to-one, especially because appointed can't fall under traditional, even procedure within my own office. Like you're looking at always, the other person's sole decisions over the management of an employee. And I think that can be advantageous at times, especially for your person. But also, if you're looking at the whole of the council, I really believe that this particular model is more effective. And I share that perspective from a former council member. That happens to be, my sense of it. I'll tell you, both from the administrative, as an administrator who oversees a vast portfolio here, there is a lot of time serving individual needs of council members. And that's part of what we do, but every minute spent to chase down a new policy objective, a new idea that may or may not have legs in the long term is a lot of time. But and part of that I own. Like I'll be working with you all next year because I think this is an important, like finding these efficiencies, if we can do so, is in the best interest of the taxpayer. So I do think this shift, I like the 2 and 2. I also like mostly the idea that an ongoing staff lead remains committed to the chair, regardless of party. You know, in 2 years, if it were to shift over, that person would still remain the primary contact to the various independent electeds. I think that is probably, in my opinion, the biggest benefit of this change. And then I would say from a county perspective, I would also say that change specifically would, in my opinion, benefit independent electeds beyond my own office. So I come to this having served in your shoes for many years, now being in my unique position, going into my 2.5 term as your county mayor, but also seeing sort of the impact on the county. I do think the budget savings matter. And I will note, and not that you meant it intentionally, Sheldon, but last year I had a position cut. And the position, it was suggested by the council, it just needed some new rebranding and we would bring it back. Did not bring that position back this year because we are under a very, very limited budget time. So I do think there are those of us taking cuts. And frankly, if you look at the downward bias of the tax, of property tax, along with the inflationary pressures of recent times, every division and department is doing more right now. And there are a lot of unfilled FTEs. So we are running on fumes. And I think it is important that we look at all of our cross-county portfolios. I have in my own, today sent a note back. No, we're not going to spend the remaining money in my contribution budget. We're going to give it back to the taxpayers this year. And that's true of some of the other requests, given we do have some flexibility with remaining budget for this particular year. I think we all need to do that at Salt Lake County. So I recognize this as a budget saving initiative, but again, from where I sit, now, why does this matter? And I want to be clear, and I really hadn't intended to speak today, but I don't have the ability to veto FTEs. But I want to be clear for anybody coming in, as much as I value them, 2 Democrats won, 1 Republican won, we're still at 5-4. I think this is a good operational change for Salt Lake County hard stop. And if asked, I'll defend that position both publicly and otherwise. I am very understanding of anyone who feels impacted by this change. I get that. But if we never are willing to make tough decisions and by majority vote, move down the road towards those decisions, then we're going to be stuck in, I think, an ineffective government. So yes, there are consequences. There are hardworking people who may not return here as council staff. I would, if that's the case, encourage them to look at upper or other opportunities at the county. I hope there are some. We do have unfilled FTEs in places. We'll be entering into a new budget year with hopefully less restrictions on some of the contra, et cetera. I hope that any good employee who works for you finds a home at Salt Lake County, and I mean that. I will say that we are also in a position to assist others. I personally have been the victim of serving in an appointed position and losing my job more than once in my career. And looking back, it was not a burden. It worked out. If you're strong, this is a big county with a lot going on. We have a diverse economy, a great state government, and we've seen people come and go. So I don't really believe that the narrative around the merit protection side of things applies to appointed. Appointed individuals make a choice. There's pros and cons to that choice, and there isn't always the amount of stability. But they get the chance to hang out with you, to be part of the pulse, to make policy, to have their voice impacted in the system. That's why I did it. That's why I think they did it. And we'll all be fine in the end. And again, I made took my minute or two today because I want to be clear where I stand as we look at future council's choices and the role that I might have in the future around a potential veto. I can't veto FTEs. I do have line item veto over budget increases next year. And I again, didn't want to give this speech because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or let the incoming members think I don't value them. I do. I believe this is the right decision for Salt Lake County. And I appreciate all of you have very valid arguments to be made, and this isn't an easy one, recognizing that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right. Where are we at in the process?
We're done.
We are done
We're
with that
moving
one.
on.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to 4.4, county discussion direction regarding the approval of the 2025 tentative budget. Let's go ahead and start there. Dave?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is that on?
It is now.
Thank you.
And so before we jump into the, uncontentious compensation discussion, there is one item that I hope that will receive council support, and that is that we have realized some underexpend in fleet, and I'm going to ask Wada to tee that up and look for a motion on that.
I'll slide over to this one here. There you go.
Yes, so thanks, Dave. Let me start this budget workshop with some good news then. Fleet management, they had a TI capital project that was completed for $308,644, less than the original budgeted amount. So that amount has been transferred back to general fund as a one-time money. So that's how much money we have more.
Good news.
And that's a difference in the mayor's proposed, so there's a motion to recognize that.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Easy motion. Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Get us started.
Okay, well, with that sorbet in our mouth, compensation. So we're going to start off with the mayor's proposed as it relates to non-sworn. That was a 1.5% structural adjustment, a 2% career, and then for those at the top of their grade, a 1% longevity. That's what the mayor's proposed. What is the council's pleasure?
Okay, council's pleasure on this one. Go ahead, Dave.
Madam Chair, if you'll all recall, I was a strong advocate for raising salaries when we saw inflation on the horizon, which was actualized. I'm not seeing a lot of inflation right now, and I am seeing a very tight budget. And so I would offer this is now the time to hold. We've been pretty aggressive in my 4 years in giving increases, and so I would move that this proposal of 1.5 structure, 2% be cut from the mayor's budget.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
I'm so sorry, I stepped out for 1 second. Are you saying that you are moving that we don't approve the mayor's proposed pay structure increases? Is that correct for everything?
David, I thought you just brought up the
Non-sworn. This is
non-sworn.
the increase for merit and other benefit eligible employees, excluding sworn.
Well,
It's about $100,000. Is that right?
No, sir.
Okay. My notes are incorrect. Millions.
I believe that you were referring to the electeds there. My
For the sworn, or the non-sworn.
I'm just saying, I believe that 100,000 that you're referring to is something else.
Thank you.
That's the elected officials amount.
That's
roughly
the elected officials.
so
Millions in savings.
This is the general salary increase. This is what you're proposing currently in your current budget, yes?
I took it that what Dave was queuing up was the general salary increase for the vast majority of employees, which was the structural
Yes, and
amounts.
according to my notes, it's 8.3 million in base salaries and 10.4 million including benefits. So it's a $10.4 million item.
So I'm concerned about that and would vote no on that, Dave, for the reason that while I very, very much appreciate and support our law enforcement, everything we do, everything they do is contingent upon civilian, non-sworn folks being able to be effective in their jobs. And I think we know that we're already, not at market pay or we're trying to get at market pay for all of our jobs. And I think recognizing the work of our employees and supporting them in this time of high inflation is important. So I think at a minimum, we should be adopting the mayor's proposed for sworn and non-sworn folks. So I would vote no.
Madam Chair,
Yep, go ahead.
yeah, I agree with Suzanne and would make a substitute motion that we adopt the mayor's recommended compensation.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion, second, a substitute motion and second. Any discussion on this one? Okay, hearing none. I'll call for the question on this one first. Will you do a roll call vote, please?
I should just give you my microphone and then we hold out. Okay.
Councilmember Theodore,
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord,
Nay.
Councilmember Harrison,
Yes.
Councilmember Bradley,
Yes.
Councilmember Winder Newton,
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart,
No.
Councilmember Bradshaw,
Aye.
Councilmember Granado,
Aye.
Councilmember Stringham.
Aye. Okay, that passes.
So, Madam Chair, I'm moving on to the elected officials. So the council controls the salaries of elected officials with the exception of the judge. The state statute requires that the judge receive the increases, assuming that their salary is currently below the cap established by the state, of all the other employees. So in this case, it would be the 3.5%. The judge and her staff basically would argue that her experience is such that she deserves a much larger increase of about $22,000, which is about 13%. The question on the table is, what would you like to do given her request?
I'll be honest, I would rather just leave it where it is right now and we'll give her the 3.5% and move forward, but I'm one of 9, so I would make that motion.
I'll second you, Laurie.
Okay. Any additional discussion on that?
Can I just clarify, was what you just said was what the mayor had proposed? Is that correct? Or was that different than what the mayor had?
The mayor provided a green light on what was requested by the Justice Court. It didn't get into the level of detail that we are now dealing with.
Okay, thank you.
But the mayor also recognizes that it's the council's authority and responsibility to set the salaries of elected officials.
Yes, Mitch, go ahead.
And I will say that as a matter of statute, the decision to provide the judge at least that 3.5%, if that is the merit increase, is non-discretionary. You have to provide, unlike almost anything else I'll tell you today, you have to do that.
Yeah, planning on that. That's not a problem.
So Mitch, do we even need to vote on it separately if there's not the appetite to go beyond it? Okay.
Yes, I do think we need to vote to approve it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I made that motion. And I have a second. Are we prepared to vote on that?
I just have one other question. Was some of that requested increase because of legislation that directed salaries for judges to be some percentage of district court judges? Am I remembering this?
That is the underlying statute. And at times the state has been sort of hesitant to increase salaries in a consistent manner for judges. So there's kind of a catch-up, if you will. But basically, the judge's current salary satisfies the legal requirement. There's an additional legal requirement that says the judge must receive the average increase awarded other benefit-eligible employees, and that's the 3.5%. So that is the floor.
Yeah, I'll call the question on this one, sorry. All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
And now the salary increases for other elected officials in the county. And normally, in the past at least, that has been the increase received by other benefit eligible employees.
And that would be my intent. I don't know how the rest of the council
I'll
feel.
move that we approve the mayor's recommended budget.
I have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Roll call.
Okay, roll call.
Did you repeat the motion?
The motion is to approve the pay for, we have to approve the pay for the elected officials separate. So it would be giving them the COLA increase we're giving all employees is all we're doing.
We've included an attachment that shows the salaries for elected officials, and it's the responsibility of the council to set that. So we thought it was appropriate, especially given the judge's request, to bring that for you.
Agreed.
Can I, before we vote, can I make a comment about
Yeah,
this?
go ahead.
I'm willing to support this right now, but I will say, in the past, and I've asked for this years ago, and I think we need to seriously look at this. We've got to figure out what the pay should be for our elected officials, because we have some who are managing a very small staff and small budget, and others who are managing a massive staff and budget, and yet there's not a lot of difference in pay and their. Anyway, I think we need to, as a council, have some ledge intent or something that says that we need HR to help us figure out what should pay be for each of these elected positions. So maybe after we.
You could make that ledge intent right now.
Okay, I'm going to make ledge intent that we, in 2025, look at and consider what the pay structure should be for each each elected official in the county.
Don't we still have a motion, though, that we're
Yeah, I
doing
Oh, yeah,
a
we
roll
do.
call
We're
on?
still in the middle of the motion.
I'll pull my motion back and I'll make that one instead.
I'll be your second.
We'll do that. Okay.
Yeah. Motion and a second. Any additional discussion on that motion?
Well, I think we just went to roll call. So we did
Yeah,
the
roll call.
yes and the no, and now we have to go to roll call. Sorry, I apologize.
No, you're right. Thank you for keeping us straight right now.
Roll call. Councilmember Granado.
Yes.
Councilmember Theodore.
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison.
Yes.
Councilmember Winder Newton.
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart.
No.
Councilmember Alvord.
Nay.
Councilmember Bradley.
Yes.
Councilmember Bradshaw.
Aye.
Councilmember Stringham.
Yes. Okay, that passes.
And then the last compensation item that I'm aware of is when Sharon presented earlier this year or last month, there was a $263,000 cost associated with bringing employees who were well below market up to the market. And the chair asked whether or not that was possible to start that earlier. And it's complicated. I mean, because if you try to give the individual the salary early, then basically when January rolls around, there's another pay raise waiting for them. We had talked about the possibility of using a different approach. But if you're satisfied that this will increase of the 263 is included in the pay structure provided by the mayor, then I think that as of January, these people will be taken care of.
And my goal at the time was, this was clear back in the end of October that we had this discussion, and I wanted to see it happen much sooner. At this point, that doesn't make any sense. We might as well just do it as of January 1st at this point, so it's not so complicated, and I'm good with that. But I would have rather have seen it happen much quicker than that, so I get it.
So
I'm good with going with the mayor's recommended on this one, and let's get them up to pay, and let's do it January 1st.
and that was included in the motion.
That was, yeah.
Okay, so then moving on to FTE-related requests.
Real quick though, sorry to interrupt you. Do we want to do the ledge intent though?
Oh, I'm
That-
sorry.
Oh, yes, now we can do the legend.
Well, because I also have one other addition to
Yeah,
that, if you're
yeah,
okay.
sure.
See if this isn't, you're amenable to this. I agree, like, I'd love to have HR's help in helping us determine what would be a reasonable pay for the different elected officials. One other thing that I've been trying to dig into is pay for our various folks within law enforcement to make sure that we're not paying to train them, but then they get taken by some other entity, whether that's Utah Department of Corrections or some other law enforcement entity. I would love a little bit of help and guidance to help make sure that we're paying our sworn officers what market pay is in corrections and so forth, because I really care about
Salaries,
keeping the best here. And I think they set the gold standard within our sheriff's office, and I want to make sure we're we're doing right by them, if you're amenable to that.
Yeah, didn't we get that though when the sheriff presented? I mean, we kind of saw where the pay. The
No, we see
market
what they are on
was.
the whole. I want to look at individual jobs. I
Yeah,
want to see
Oh,
where the
within
ration
the sheriff's portfolio.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Because I just feel like we've been trying to dig into that, and I feel like we ran out of time, but I want to maybe have a little bit of help from HR if you're amenable to adding that.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think these are two different issues, but if we
Yeah, we
want
can
to.
do it in two different things. I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
okay. So they're two separate issues.
So
Sharon,
if
it
you
would
want to make
just
one, and
be-
then I'll let you make another, and we'll go from there.
Okay, that's fine too. So I would move that we instruct HR to help us with salary surveys for the elected officials in Salt Lake County. So we can look at things like budget size, employee supervisory responsibilities, and other factors as they see fit.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
And I move ledge intent that we get a little bit of help from HR to make sure that we are at market rates, comparing certifications and so forth within law enforcement, that we're making sure we're at a pay grade, that we're keeping our great people here.
I will second that one.
Yeah.
And council member, do you want to include the possibility of developing separate pay structures for each of the sworn officer categories?
Yes, if that is what we're
It
finding
takes.
needs to happen, because I'm hearing potentially that may be what is needed.
So can I get a clarification, because I was the second on that? We're just talking strictly with the sheriff's office, correct?
Correct.
There would be a little bit of carryover though, because of there's a number of investigators in the DA's office that are sworn officers, but other than that, that's, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm supportive of the sheriff's office, and I think I can get along with the investigators as well. I just want to be very clear. My support is strictly with the sheriff's office. I know that we've seen those challenges this last year play out with what happened with UPD, so I definitely want to make sure that happens. So my second stands.
Thank you.
Awesome. So a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. All right.
Okay, so the first FT-related item that I wanted to tee up was the jail resource and reentry program. And as you may recall, this is a dynamic program, and it has a lot of facets to it. The mayor's proposed budget gave it a pretty significant reduction from what was originally proposed. This year, there are 4 sworn officers associated with this. The mayor's proposal reduces that to 2. The request for next year was for 12 FTEs. The mayor has reduced that to 8. 7 of those would be merit. 1 would be time limited, would remain time limited. Currently, they're all time limited. There's 1.5 vacancies currently. So obviously, some of these employees are, it's an FTE equivalent as opposed to all full-time positions.
And go ahead.
Oh, sorry, no, Larry, you want to go first?
Yeah,
Let's
on
go.
this one, I'll just be honest, we don't know what's going to happen now. We've got to regroup on the jail bond. We got to regroup on everything that's happening. I am not comfortable making anything merit until we have a chance to regroup and understand how that's going to come together and how this fits into the new plan. I personally am not supportive of making anything merit or permanent until we know where that's at. So I'm happy to leave them as time limited, but I am not willing to make those merit. That is where I'm at, 1 of 9. So, and that would be actually my motion to leave those as time limited.
In the time limited period ends at the end of FY25.
FY25.
So I'll just provide a quick counter argument. I know there's been a lot of discussion about all the time limited, and in that perhaps we punt that decision on all of them. If there were one area where I would disagree with that, it would be here. I think the fact that the bond failed is even more justification that this program that we know works, that is providing the type of metrics we want to see, and knowing that those time-limited positions are social workers that are very hard to recruit within the community at large, and that ultimately we are going to need more social workers for our programs as going forward, that I don't think we're going to want to lose those people. And I just, I worry, and I have sympathy for all the time limited appointments, that when you see time limited, it hurts recruitment. But within this particular sector, I think it's very important that we let it go as proposed by the mayor, so that we don't lose those people and the program can continue to be effective, recognizing that the bond did fail and there is going to be regrouping, but this is a program that works.
So I thought I was next, but that's
Yeah,
fine.
go ahead, yeah.
That's fine. I appreciate Arlen's comments. This is my point that I have with this. My concern with this is the bond did fail, which is a clear indicator from the public that this and these positions, when they were brought to us, was in anticipation of the bond passing. So why would we even consider these positions moving forward?
Initially, this was part of the transformational initiative, and it was morphed into general fund because there was an opportunity to get some money, I believe $1 million originally. So it wasn't quite as 1, 2, 3 as you suggest, Councilmember, but it did I appreciate there is some dynamics because of the Medicaid eligibility, but I do think that this is sort of I would argue this is central to the mission of the county to provide public safety and to ensure that there's at least a warm handshake for people that are leaving the jail.
Yeah, I think the people voted, though. That's what I'm trying to say.
Chair.
Yeah, hold on, let me go to Amy first, and then I have a statement, and then we'll go to you, Mayor.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. And I agree. I think that just because the bond failed, it wasn't it was, I don't know, kind of close, I guess, considering the very little amount of money that was spent on advertising what it did. I'm devastated. I think it's putting us back. But this jail reentry program is something that we know works and gets people on their feet so that they're not coming back in, which saves us tremendous dollars. If we're looking at the cost to have people keep cycling in and out, I think that this is a really important program. So I would agree with Arlen on that, being able to provide merit for those positions as part of the jail resource and reentry program.
And I guess my point specifically isn't so much that this isn't a good program. I actually think it's a very good program. My concern is we've got to regroup and come up with something. I don't want to make something permanent until we know what that actually looks like. And then I'm happy to. So if we want to reconsider this in 6 months, I'm happy to do that. But I'm not comfortable making them permanent right now. I just am not. We have not had that opportunity to meet with the mayor, to regroup and really talk about that structure looks like. And if we want to hold off and relook at this in June and say, all right, we'll make it time limited till June and reconsider at that point, I have no problem doing that. But I have a hard time making that decision now, and I would be a no if that were the case. So I guess it's a difference between a no and being comfortable.
A few things. Let me just
Madam
clarify.
Chair, I'd like to speak after the mayor.
Yep, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So I just want to rewind time a little. This program came about even under Karen Crompton's era, along with Matt Dumont and others. We really saw the need for this program. It's very independent of ARPA funding or whatever. Initially, it was grant funded. And the purpose of the program is to provide a warm handoff so we're not just dumping people onto the streets of South Salt Lake, which not only did we hear from elected officials there in the community about, right? But we also wanted to save dollars by getting people in the right place. And I've been over a couple of times. I honestly wish I could go there once a week because it's fascinating, and go visit if you haven't. The most utilized program that I have witnessed, and this is somewhat anecdotal, but I believe the data would verify this, is the engagement that individuals have with the legal defenders who are there, who get these people their court date information. And that sells like hot potatoes. We thought people would want, water or a charger or a phone charger or whatever, but they're leaving and they want to know where their court dates are. These are people, many who are unsheltered, who will benefit from walking out with a sheet of paper and knowing that they can call a person that will help them through the system. And I know over time, we're going to see more evidence-based success. It was intended as a program, and literally had nothing to do with the jail bond at the time because we hadn't even gotten that far. But additionally, we benefited first from the grant years. And then we're like, woohoo, now we've got to figure out priorities for our ARPA program spending. And to save the county general fund money, we plugged in ARPA money for a little bit. I will tell you from day one, I knew this was not a pilot program, but it was one of those things we had to prove. And we have proven it's working. So regardless if we do nothing other than fixed maintenance at Oxbow, this is a program we need to continue. So it is the one program that I said, look, let's make these people permanent. We want this program to thrive. Our number one responsibility is public safety above all else. So that's the reason we would have retooled this program had the jail bond passed, because the creation of the 100-bed step-down unit may have mitigated the need for this program. We could have combined the two. That didn't happen, so in my opinion, we need to fund it. At the point of time we do have revenue and we do want to look at the expanded mental health beds and that step-down bed program, we would then be able to be in a position, in my opinion, to change the program. Just wanted to give you all that background.
Okay, we're going to go to Ann and then we'll go to Sheldon.
The fact that the jail bond failed doesn't change the fact that the people in the county speak continually to the necessity for public safety. That's at top of mind, whether it's homelessness, whether it is mental health. Tim can speak eloquently and has on many occasions to the difficulty of hiring social workers and retaining social workers. Would you be willing to make half of them full-time merit now and put the other half on the June budget for consideration?
That's 3. Boy, we're now negotiating. Yeah.
1.5, there's 1.5, the equivalent of 1.5 FTE vacant.
I was going to say Kelly Colopy is online and could speak to
I'm
this
sure
as well.
Yeah, there she is. All right. Let me go to Sheldon next, and then I'll give Kelly a chance to speak, and then we'll go to what Ann just suggested.
Maybe my bitterness is just coming out. I have nothing against our jail people. Matter of fact, I fully support our officers. I do have an issue when the vote of the people said no. We didn't do a good job. I'd love to know what we spent total promoting this bond. But the one thing we're talking about is these people and leaving these people without. And yet, just moments earlier, we're talking about spas and leaving our other residents without the support. I know I'm bringing it back in, but this is very sensitive to me. We constantly neglect the voice of our citizens that we represent when we do these type of things, and we need to really be considering that. And for me, this is just concerning. We spent all this money to promote a bond that failed. I didn't support putting it on there. I felt that our residents knew that the interest rate was too high. Our residents knew that the amount was too high, and I knew that the plan was not well defined. But yet we're moving forward with this. And I have a hard time. We've taken and we've cut our office. We've cut the things that do to support our people out there. And once again, we're in this predicament. I personally struggle that we do anything with this until we hear from the people again. This needs to go back out to the people again.
Okay, and then let's go to Kelly.
Good afternoon, everybody. So there is 1.5 FTEs vacant. The anticipation would be that we would provide an opportunity for people to interview to be in the rest of those positions. So we could take half of the positions as part of that proposal and begin to move through the process. As has been discussed, it's very difficult to get social workers. They do seek stable environments. We have lost, I think, between 3 and 4 of our employees at JRP because they've been offered permanent positions in other organizations or other places within the county. And so it's important to us to start to move forward in that direction to make sure that we have a stable program. As the mayor did discuss, this program was sort of going to be the bridge to the next step going forward, so that there would be a shift maybe in a couple of years when the JAC came on. This looks very different than what was on the bond. This is the process where people are coming out of the jail and they have an opportunity to, as the mayor mentioned, get their court dates, They have rides and transportation to different treatment programs. They have all kinds of connection to service because of the staffing model that we have in place. And so we think this program is very, very important, and we certainly appreciate your support of it. And the more that we can move towards a permanent model, the better it will be for us to be able to retain those employees.
Thank you, Kelly. Sam, yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to just add another perspective of support to this from the prosecution side in the nexus and the system of criminal justice. These are often individuals who are leaving to get, because they're still in the process, and if they don't connect and follow through, then those will go to warrants. Those warrants will mean extra work for law enforcement. It means extra hearings for prosecutors. It means extra issues that are invested in a costly way deeper into the system. Those people whose cases have been adjudicated, but nonetheless have that support and access, then they are more likely to succeed. So there are not new offenses that are out there, therefore getting the value of the prosecution that was executed. So I just want to present that perspective as a systemic component of why this program is so critical and supported systemically. And it has been already operationalized. It is giving us systemic benefits across to multiple different partners, and that's why it's worthy of that investment. So I just wanted to add that other perspective as well.
I don't think I'm not disagreeing with you, Sam. I'm actually there with you. I just feel like we don't have this fully decided on how we're going to pay for it. What is it going to look like? What are we going to do to kind of meet the need in the meantime? And how is that going to come to fruition as we start to look at those budgets? And so to suddenly make a whole bunch of permanent positions when they've been time limited all this time. And I know we've had a hard time filling them in some cases, but we've managed to keep them mostly full. Kelly, if you had a choice of 3, which ones would you make merit right now? Which ones wouldn't you? I'm just curious.
I think the key positions are and Keely's in the room as well. She can speak to it more, but certainly the case manager position, there's only one supervisor at this point that would be full-time. The other is being proposed as time limited. The remainder of those staff members are case managers, social workers.
So they're all case managers and social workers right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, because there's seven
Yeah.
being suggested to be merit, correct?
And one of those is a supervisor. And then there's
Okay.
one supervisor that is being suggested as a time limited.
Okay. All right.
Is there a motion on the table?
Yeah, my motion is still on the table.
Oh,
So, let's vote on that and then we can do another motion if that fails. My motion is to just keep them time limited right now. So, will you do a roll call vote for that?
Did we get a second?
Did we get a second on that? No, it may have failed for lack of a second. Did we not get a second on that?
I didn't second it. I
Okay,
just asked a
nobody
question.
has seconded that
Well,
then.
I'll make a substitute motion.
Go for it.
And it's along the lines of what Arlen and Amy had advocated for. I think this program, the jail reentry program, is so important to not just having people continue to cycle in and out of jail. So I would motion that we make those positions, change them from time limited to permanent, because I think this is something that's vital to helping tackle some of these challenges.
And you're going to make all 7?
Yes. Okay. Correct. The mayor, whatever the mayor recommended in terms of making it permanent is my motion.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. So let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. Hey, Jim, we can hear you.
How are your chips?
So the only metrics.
Who, me?
Yep, you. We can hear you. I don't know what you're
All right.
eating, but it sounds really good.
I'll be more quiet, sorry.
No, you're fine. All right, roll call vote, please. Thank you.
Councilmember Bradshaw.
Aye.
Councilmember Granado.
Aye.
Councilmember Winder Newton.
Aye.
Councilmember Stewart.
No.
Councilmember Harrison.
Yes.
Councilmember Theodore. Yes. Councilmember Alvord?
Yes.
Councilmember Bradley?
Yes.
Councilmember Stringham?
No. Okay, that's 2-7. We're good. That passes. All right, next.
So I'd like to go down to the funding, time-limited FTE change in funding source, and start with the general fund there. There are 2 FTEs associated with the Taurus budget extension. There's 1 FTE extended with the mainframe project manager position. Those are both in IT. These have to do largely with the change in the tax admin system. They're both general, they're all, I should say, general fund financed. What's the council's druthers?
Okay, council. You're looking for the right document.
I mean, the default essentially is unless you have changes, then it will be the mayor's proposed at the end of the day.
And she's proposing them to be time limited or?
That's correct.
Okay. I have no problem leaving them as time limited personally, but.
I'll motion to approve as proposed.
Second.
Okay. Motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those who are opposed?
So the next,
That passes. I didn't think I heard everybody. Did everybody know what we were voting on? Let me just clarify that. We were voting on the FTEs for the Taurus positions. There's 2, and the other one is for the mainframe. Is that correct?
that's right.
And those are currently proposed as time limited, and we would keep those as time limited. And that was with the motion, so just want to make sure everybody was clear on that. Okay, all right, keep going.
So the next group is the time-limited positions that were basically awarded in order to deal with backlog. And so there are 4 time-limited FTEs with the DA, 3 with the surveyor, and 3 also with the LDA. And the mayor, as we discussed last week, indicated that one of the reasons that they decided to extend these positions is because they're all occupied. There are incumbents in all 10 of these positions. And the issue essentially is, you said, the council made it clear that these were going to be time-limited positions, and presumably they were going to be funded until the backlog was addressed. There have been problems with the court backlog for obvious reasons, and in many cases, everybody's looking into to do more with the FTEs they have. Having said that, if you extend them for the year, then we're going to be back at the same time next year talking about this. So one alternative would be to say we could extend them for 6 months, but come July of 2025, these time-limited positions are no more. The other more hardline position would be to say, I'm sorry, these positions are going to go away at the end of this year. What would the council like to do?
Madam Chair, I'd like to start just by making a motion that the indigent legal services that we, because I believe the mayor's budget included funding those as merit, right? Oh, no, you
No,
guys
they were
proposed
extended because
extending them as
we're
time
only-
limited.
It's because the backlog from COVID still exists and we're still working
And
on
that's
making
what we're-
progress.
But
towards
part of the
it.
problem with that is because of the courts, not because we can actually move them any faster. So I'm not sure if throwing people at it's really helping much. If the courts aren't getting them in, yeah, well, they're going to have to be resolved no matter what. If we can't get court time in and they're not speeding that up, we're not.
The courts catch up and then we can't.
Yeah, but the courts aren't catching up. They're not adding extra time to do that. That's what I'm seeing right now. We actually asked during the time that they would add more time to the courts to actually pick up that backlog, and the courts said no. So that has not happened in that time. So we're paying a whole bunch of people to do backlog. They should have caught up with the backlog of what they can do for the courts right now. So that's where my struggle is. Do you see what I'm
Can
saying?
we have Neil from the?
Yeah, and I would love to hear from him as well, but
Talk about that. Sorry, we have no mic for you up here, but.
Here.
As long as
Yeah.
people share, I think
we're
okay.
good. Welcome, Neil.
Okay. I just wanted to provide a little bit of specificity about what these 3 positions are. 2 of them are social workers. They're housed actually within the Juvenile Defenders Association.
Okay.
And so we're finding that both the efficiency of the attorneys in that office is greatly expanded by having some of the social workers take over tasks that we would otherwise be paying attorneys to do at a higher rate. And we're finding that the outcomes that the juveniles who are in the system are having when they exit the system is to the benefit.
It's improving.
We think that that's pulling down recidivism within our adult system because we know that early intervention with kids is more effective than intervention later with adults. The LDA position is actually their data manager, and she has provided extensive reports to the county. The level of transparency we're seeing from them is just really exceptional. And we think that it's making their overall, every person within their organization more efficient and thereby saving county dollars. So it is true there is still a backlog, and they are working hard to the best of the levers that they can pull to work on that. But I just wanted to provide a little bit of specificity about what these specific positions are doing.
These three are doing things outside of just regular backlog work. So
Correct.
that's what I wanted to understand.
We would argue that they are making both UJDA and LDA overall more efficient, which is helping with the backlog. But we also think it's helping just with the overall product they're providing to Salt Lake County. And we do think they're actually a savings because any time that's non-attorney time, which is obviously billed at a much higher rate, we think is a better return on the taxpayer dollar.
Okay, can you do me a big favor?
Yes.
In June, I'd love to have you come back and report on these three positions. So we
Absolutely.
can hear an update, numbers, what we're seeing, what kind of savings you think you're seeing because of it. That'd be fabulous.
We can certainly do that. And I know that Rich Morrow, when he was here, invited you and some of the other council members.
And I'm planning to do
visit.
that, yes.
So let's do both. Let's show you them in action, and then we'd love to come back and provide you some numbers to demonstrate what they're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're coming
I'd
to
like
that.
to invite any of you who'd like to come both to see what the LDA does and what the juvenile defenders are doing.
And then Sheldon.
So a quick question, it's probably maybe for Wah and others. You mentioned that this has savings, and I'm wondering if we've done some fiscal analysis already on this to see if these positions are truly giving those savings. I know that my office has asked for some of that analysis on these various positions, showing how that dollar change has. Do we have any of that?
Not at the present time, no, council member, we don't.
Okay.
That's basically what I'm asking for right now.
Yeah, I was just hoping to get it before we made a decision with budget because they've already been operating. So it's not that hard to go back historically and look.
Well, so the issue has been, Kelly and I tried to look into this and provide some of those numbers. The difficulty is we track a lot of what these social workers do in terms of the hours, in terms of the cases that they work on. What we can't readily do now, and it's certainly something we're willing to work on, is to differentiate the sort of hours that they're taking off of the attorneys versus the hours that they are doing on tasks that otherwise wouldn't occur, which we do think still are a positive investment because we think the outcomes are better. But in terms of quantifying, we're spending X number of dollars on social work hours and we're saving Y number of dollars on attorney hours. Thus far, we haven't been able to find a perfect metric to do that. We're certainly willing to work on that.
Just with me, any proposal that I've ever done in my private business for a position, I've had to justify it well before it's ever been given versus give it and then justify. So,
Madam Chair, I'm happy to make a motion that we approve the mayor's budget on the LDA positions according to what was proposed.
Okay, Suzanne had something real
I'll second that, but I have a tour set up in, I think, early January. I can't remember, but I'll find the date and make sure everyone is invited because they were very kind to reach out.
and just before we vote, just to clarify, I'm not saying anything against it. It's just what I'm thinking fiscally minded, trying to be fiscally conservative. That's what I always do. So.
Okay. All right. We have a motion. We have a second. So all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that passes. All right, so that handled the LDA, but we've got to deal with the others.
That's correct.
Okay.
There are 4 in the DA and 3 in the surveyor.
To be honest, I'm still wanting to keep things time limited right now until we figure out budgets for this next cycle. So, what does the council wish right now? Yeah, Sim, go ahead.
I think our request for the time limited was as keeping them time limited. They were not being asked for merit change.
Right.
And as you recall, we started with 22, we've cut 18 down, and it is the underspend from that ARPA funding, so it's budget neutral. So we would just ask for the use of that money for the continuation of that for the remainder of the year as the time limited positions.
So it's one-time money.
Yeah, it's one-time money for those time limited. Was that just for through this year? Were you asking for 2026 as well? Just 2025. Okay, that's what I thought.
And
I
they're
just want to verify.
incumbents, and those positions are filled with incumbents, so.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'll do a motion that we approve the district attorney's time limited and surveyor time limited through the end of 2025.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
Okay. And then I made a promise to tee up the auditor. The mayor's proposal would keep them, the two FTEs that they have as time limited through the end of 2025. The idea was for the council to determine whether or not those two time limited positions could be made merit.
Okay. I'm going to let the auditor come up for a second. I might give you two. We'll see. Depends on what you say.
Could I just?
Just kidding.
Is that chair super low?
It is.
It's like sitting in a high chair.
I mean, you can.
Dave.
There you go.
All right. So my comments will be brief today. I know you guys are super busy. I don't, first off, I want to apologize. I don't think I've been making this clear over the last 2.5 years, but hopefully this will clear it up. I just want to focus on this area right here, just concerning my office. All these numbers are just FTEs. They've come from our budget packets right off the internet. So these aren't Chris Harding numbers. These are right from our budget numbers. But if you can see that from, these are our total auditor counts in this column. But we have two parts to our office. We have a tax side and an audit side. And I've removed the whole tax side to arrive at these numbers, as well as in the audit side, it includes myself, my deputy policy advisors, and then a handful of audit managers that don't do the audit work. And so now we're just talking about staff auditors in this column, and that's when the office is fully staffed. So in 2014, a decade ago, we had essentially 9 staff auditors if the office was fully staffed, auditing about $1 billion, okay? Here's been the ebbs and flows throughout the year. Here's when I came in 22, and keep in mind, we didn't have 6 staff auditors because we had several vacancies that had been open, some of them for years. We staffed those up. We got 2 permanent right off the bat in the June budget in 22. In the end of 22, we came for 2 more. Well, my initial estimate was I wanted 12 new auditors, and after the council got up after being shocked to the floor, they said, not just no, but they said, how about a try before we buy? So that got us to 10. So I want you to, so from 2014, 9 auditors auditing $1 billion, and I know dollars is definitely an imperfect way to talk about the county, because if you see our total countywide employees on the side, our employees haven't doubled in the last 10 years, but this is just the complexity and the growth of the county. We now have 10 auditors. This is including the 2 time-limited auditors that I'm asking to be made permanent. So this number of staff auditors, 10, we have now 10 auditors looking at almost more than double the budget, okay? So my request is that these time-limited auditors
to fully staff us at 10, be made permanent, that would equate to an 11% growth in our office, if we're talking just the staff auditors in the last 10 years. These other departments, these are just numbers, it's not a perfect system, but just kind of comparatively to see the growth in their staff over the years versus ours. If we got one time limited and one merit, we'd essentially, it'd be about zero growth in the last decade. If we get both time limiteds made to merit, we're at about 11% growth. I can't stress anymore, like, I get it, it's a rough budget season, and I hope this doesn't come off as cliche, but I'm going to give you a quote from the Art of War. Well, it's not really a quote because I don't have it perfect, but in there it talks about, like, he's speaking to the generals and he's saying, look, bravery just for bravery's sake doesn't do a lot of good for the people. If you're army and you send them in there and you get all your guys killed, but nobody retreats and runs away, you're not serving your people. And I would say, I would make the argument, just making budget cuts without being strategic about it or looking back at what you're asking the auditor group to look at, doubling the budget, the size of the county, and essentially saying one auditor is all we're getting. I don't think it's unreasonable for me to ask for my 2 time limited to be made permanent. We are still well behind the curve of where we should be at. But I'm going to deal with that. I promise I won't come for at least a couple of years asking for more auditors, but that's my pitch to you.
Okay, Sheldon and then Amy.
Yeah, so quick comment, Chris. I appreciate you following up with me and answering some of the questions that I had, and I recognize that, there are a lot of other things going on when we talked. I would say, the one thing that I've talked about is that we need to be fiscally responsible. And one of the things that I've found that helps preserve that as we take away from what needs to be done is having a good audit team and a strong audit team. So I appreciate what your follow-up, and for me personally, I think this is something that I think is necessary and that I think should be supported from my perspective.
Thank you.
Amy?
Well, I guess I'll just make the comment. I agree with you. It's important for us to have good audits and to have a strong team there. I do think it's important too that if we're going further upstream, we got to look at having good people who can execute on policies and have the manpower to be able to not take shortcuts in other places, right, throughout the county. And so I think it's nice to have a good auditor who can come in and help us see where our shortfalls are. But we also have to recognize that if we spread people too thin and we're not actually cutting programs, we're just making it harder for people to do their job. That's where shortcuts happen. And I think that's where we get into trouble. And we've maybe seen that with some of the audits where policies aren't followed because we make people too short-staffed and spread things too thin. And so just want to make that statement. You and I had a conversation last night, and I think that one of the things that we could see some improvement with the auditor's office is the communication. It'd be, you and I talked about this with the mayor and her staff. If you're seeing major issues that aren't getting resolved, or coming to the council, if there's policies that we need to take a stronger look at and not overstepping maybe some bounds there, and also recognizing that keeping some of our issues with, fixing them internally before we publicize them to the media would probably be a good thing moving forward as well. So anyway, appreciate your good work. We appreciate our auditing team, and I think it's incredibly important, and happy to hear from my colleagues on this too.
Thank you.
Okay, other comments from the council? Oh, Jim, go ahead, Jim.
Yes, I may have a different perspective on that. I've had some concern over the past couple of years about the auditing that does take place and the way those audits are communicated to the public. I'm not sure that the utilization of the audit team is being used in the most effective way. And I use, for example, the latest one that came out in the paper a week or so ago about the use of cards and gift cards, et cetera, et cetera. And the way the press played that, and part of that is because of the way the auditor may have expressed it, is that he is the bulldog and looking for concerns everywhere he can. And by gosh, he found some. And yet in the same article, he also says there is nothing illegal done. And so there's mixed messages there. But the message to the public in that particular article, in my belief, is that, oh boy, the county is, boy, we've got problems in the county, the way they're using gift cards, et cetera, et cetera. And that wasn't the story at all, really. The auditor, by his own admission, said we found nothing illegal. So I'm saying, how much money do we spend on an audit like that, which didn't really show much and was probably not necessarily a full-blown audit or necessary of a full-blown audit? And would that money be used better in some other form of auditing in a more productive way? So that's kind of my concern.
Sure.
Given what I've seen over the last year or two, I would say that we don't even need the time limited ones. That we might be able to get by with 2 less people, but certainly don't make them permanent yet until we see better performance. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for that feedback, Jim. To that, I would reply with a question, a rhetorical question maybe, and that's, and I can address it to the whole council and management of the county might be sitting behind me. Have you read that audit, the Amazon audit and the audit that we did on the gift cards and the proprietary cards? That is not a nothing burger, if you will. There are significant findings there. I've been saying this for the last several presentations talking about the tone at the top. We have some serious tone at the top issues here at the county. What I wouldn't give to have somebody from the county come in, look at my department and come up to me and say, hey, here's all the ways your department could improve. I would take that and run with it. We just had an agreement to the facts meeting just the other day with the department here in the county. And this happens, I would say 90% of the time. We send an email out to these agreement to the facts meeting and say, here's the laundry list. We want you to read the audit. We want you to discuss it with the points of contacts that our auditors have been interacting with on your team, and then have some well thought out questions, our recommendations. Bring any questions, concerns you have to these agreement to the facts meetings. About 90% of the time, these department heads, directors show up to this meeting, and the only concern is, can we disagree with these findings? And we say, yeah, what do you disagree with? Well, we haven't had the time to read the audit yet. We haven't had time to look over it. I mean, what is that? What message is that sending to the taxpayers in the county, to our staff throughout the county? So before you want to knock the auditors and the audits, we should address the question that we're raising time and again with the tone at the top here in the county.
Well,
Madam Chair, I have a comment as well after Jim.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to
Let
say.
Jim finish. We'll go to Ann and Dave, if that's okay. Awesome.
Okay, so let me finish? Okay,
Yep.
thanks. No, I was just going to respond that, yes, it may be obvious that I didn't read thoroughly that audit, but I did read the comments that the auditor did make in the paper, where the bottom line was there was nothing illegal or in what was going on. He didn't find anything illegal. And yet, one of the things I've seen over my tenure in the county is the county never gets credit for anything unless we really beat people on the head. They're quick to point out problems. And I think how we communicate information out of the county to the general public is critical. And I thought this was a mistake in the way that was presented. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay, my comments are, I think the problem is the disconnect between what the term audit actually means and what is being portrayed to the public. And Stuart, I'm going to impose on you, given your vast financial knowledge to give us some understanding of exactly what the term audit means, because I think they're following the correct procedure, and I think we're misunderstanding what audit means.
Well, I mean, I'm going to go from private, right? And also what I went through with UFA, right? If anybody knows, I was the chair of UFA through one of the most tumultuous times of the Unified Fire Authority. An audit is coming in and saying, here are areas where you're exposed. Here are the areas that the controls are not functioning the way that they expect. And a control is something either that you have a systematic control or a perceived control or a procedural control that goes into place. And Chris is just testing against those controls. He's saying, hey, you know, do we have a control that makes sure that anything that's spent in this county that can be accounted for? When you buy gift cards, you start layering it down, right? And then also the utilization of the account. So I think that's all Chris is doing. He's coming in and saying, here's these recommendations. We have these controls that we say we're containing the finances and we're containing the expenses, and we don't have the ability to have misuse of the funds. And I think that's all he's doing. And that's why I say, hey, you know, Chris, I told him right away, I said, I don't know that I'm ready to give you a decision on this, but I will have my decision by this meeting. And after getting the information I needed from his office as well as Richard, I felt comfortable that we need to have these positions in order to make sure that we're doing exactly what we're supposed to, so that we don't have, say, a UFA scenario in Salt Lake County. I would never want that in this county. I don't think any of us would want that. That was the worst 2 years of my life, and I'm so glad that Chris Pangra enjoyed being in front of a camera, because Chris Pangra is the one that took all that while I sat in the background and put my name on this report that you can still pull up that had 135 different points that I had to work on over 4 years with Chief Peterson. Even though I was no longer the chair, as the former chair, I became the finance committee chair. So that's what I'm saying is I never want us to get in that state. And you know, the number one area that we had issues, purchasing cards, gift cards, and travel and expense.
And I think it helps us determine where we're deficient in policy.
Yeah.
And so all we're asking him to do is come back, look at the policy, look at what's being done, and give us recommendation. And if it's a problem because it goes public, that's the breaks.
Yeah, and can I just add one more thing, if you don't mind? The one thing that we got hit on too was routine audit. And I think what Chris is arguing here with these additional positions is we have this schedule of routine audits that need to happen. And if we don't have these, those routine audits can't happen. And then when we go to do the checklist that you're supposed to do with boards, that looks negative on that checklist. So
if I could just make a quick comment. We don't want to set the bar so extremely low that the basis for a successful audit is that we found something illegal or the law has been broken. I think you can totally mismanage an office, waste taxpayer funds, and you've done nothing illegal, but you sure as heck have done something wrong in the eyes of the taxpayers' money. This is not our money. This is the taxpayers' money. And I'll be damned if the bar that we're going for is to find something illegal. I'm here for efficiency, an economical use, an effective use of the taxpayers' money. And that's the bar. That's what we should be aiming for.
Hear, 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 hear. The little British parliamentarian. Can I,
Yeah, Dave, you're next.
you know, and let's not lose focus on the fact that an audit is more than just a piece of paper. It's the fact that we have a really strong auditor that's conducting regular audits can change the thinking of all of our employees to just really avoid anything that even smells of corruption. And I'm someone that, as a dentist, I wasn't audited very often. We had a couple little regulators come through, but now I'm in the insurance industry. And just knowing that they're going to be looking at my books every 4 years, knowing that I'm going to have an annual audit, I'll tell you, I try to do everything A+. But if I found out they were loosening a little on me and we're only going to do it every decade, and then I would,
right.
I don't know what it would do, but maybe I wouldn't be as diligent. Well, I'm such a good person, I would do it anyway. But no, it does have an effect, and it just keeps everybody doing their best work.
Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we move these two time-limited positions to merit positions within the mayor's budget.
I'll second.
And I've got comment by Amy and then by Arlen, please.
So I think that there's some things that we can work with you on too. I mean, I know sometimes we get complaints from people on, you talk about timing and responsiveness and everything else, but sometimes they get an email and a week later are expected to be in a meeting and having read it. So maybe give them 2 weeks so that they have time. I mean, maybe there's some things that can help with that.
Sure.
I think what you provide is incredibly valuable. That being said, I think for right now, I'm supportive of continuing the time limited positions for another year. And so I'll do a substitute motion to do, instead of taking them merit, but do time limited for another year.
Okay, I have a substitute motion. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All right, any discussion on that one? Go ahead. You still have your chance
So
to
my
speak.
question,
Yes.
which might be a little too in the weeds, but I was just kind of curious based off of the way you've done the auditors to the budget. Looking at those numbers, the county budget has more than doubled since 2014. But a lot of that is not discretionary money that we get to allocate from
Sure,
this
sure,
council. A lot of it is
That's true.
actually because of a state audit directive, if I
Sure,
remember
sure.
correctly, that we track
Understandable.
UTA funds and whatnot that are collected through the county that go through the county budget but aren't our discretionary funds. So I'm just curious, are those type of funds, or is there any ability or reason that you would audit? Again, that's a pretty big, significant chunk of that $2 billion.
Sure.
Or is that in the purview of the state treasurer? I'm just kind
How
of
much
curious.
is it? Does
that's
anybody know how
It's
Darren-
about $500 million.
500 million.
is the UTA portion?
It's pass-through portions, so it'd be RDA pass-throughs, UTA, and Department of Transportation sales taxes.
And what's our general fund right now before we pass
well,
this? Do you know off the top?
It's a couple hundred million.
Okay.
No, it's maybe 300 million. I'd have to look.
Okay.
Chris, you came, I believe, a couple of months ago and gave us the result of you being audited from your peer outside source. Could you
Right,
refresh my memory?
we got a
on that?
peer review, the first peer review ever for the Salt Lake County Auditor's Office, conducted by the Association of Local Government Auditors. They came in, spent about a week going through our audits, interviewing our folks, doing their field work, and we got the highest rating. The ratings are pass with deficiencies, and fail, and we got the pass rating. So yeah, we're might be good to make mention that we are required now through legislation that our audits need to be in compliance with GAGAS. I think that adds protections for the county as well as the auditors to make sure that they're done at that standard. But yes, we're doing our audits in compliance with GAGAS. We'll get one of those every 3 years.
And didn't you have an unfunded mandate from the legislature? Am I remembering correctly?
The legislation that was passed in the 23 session mandates that the audits conducted by our office in Salt Lake County have to be done in compliance with GAGAS. Yeah, and we didn't ask for any additional funds to do that. We're just doing it because my auditors are that awesome.
Amy, could I make a substitute to your substitute? I'd like to make a substitute motion that we make one merit and leave one time.
How about this? I'll amend my motion to do that,
Okay.
since we are at a substitute motion.
Could I get clarification on my question though? Because I am curious.
I don't think that's
you
the first
still
time
have
anyone's done that.
authority over those funds.
And I would say, no, we probably wouldn't look at any pass-through funds. And again, back to my opening statement, these numbers are an imperfect way to look at it, but I grabbed the same number, the same line from each of the budgets from 2014 through 25. So whatever that pass-through amount has been from 14 through the mayor's proposed in 25, we're still talking about the same ratio of auditors to auditable dollars, if that helps at all. Does that
Madam
make
Chairman,
sense?
I'll second Amy's amendment to her substitute.
Well, I
Thank
think
you.
Suzanne's my second, but
Oh,
She would
sorry.
have to
Sorry.
accept the second, though, as it's.
Yeah, so
Okay.
she would
Are you
need to-
okay with that?
doing one merit, one time limited? Or do you want to withdraw your second?
All right, then you've got a
You're
second
in it.
here.
Just for sake of me knowing how to vote, could we vote on just giving him two first, and then if it fails, we'll go to the weaker one?
That's
Well,
fine.
That's why I'm
unfortunately, I
categorizing it.
have the, I have multiple,
Well, she had her
Counters.
first.
I know.
Yeah, I was going to wait for that one.
Yeah, my first one was to
Right, but then I have a
Merritt
counter
and-
one
and
here.
Stewart's, and then
Seconded it.
Amy countered with,
I'm happy to withdraw my motion so that you guys
Okay.
can vote on
Vote on
it and
that
see
one,
if it
and then
passes.
bring back if
Okay.
necessary. Okay.
So wait, so are you still back to 2 now?
We're
We're
back
back to
to 2.
two.
No, she's going to withdraw her
I wanna give
motion.
that one a
We can vote on
chance.
that one. We can go from
Yeah.
there. All right, I'm going to call for a vote before anybody changes their mind. All in
Okay.
favor?
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
Aye.
Did you want, let's,
I was just curious on
I'm going to audit
the
that.
incumbency of the positions right now.
We,
is it
our
pretty vacant?
our time limits are filled. We have a merit position that just opened up, but it's been posted and we are actively recruiting for it.
Okay, so you have one open merit position.
One open merit
Okay,
position.
all right, thanks.
Yeah.
okay. All right, now I'm going to call for the vote again. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, we're going to have to do a roll call vote. We'll roll call that.
Councilmember Theodore,
Nay.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Bradshaw,
Nay.
Councilmember Alvord,
Yes.
Councilmember Winder Newton,
Nay.
Councilmember Harrison,
No.
Councilmember Granado,
Nay, or aye. I'm not even sure what we're
Which
voting
Janice
on
at the
this
table
point.
today?
It's been a lot of motion.
Aye.
Councilmember Bradley,
No.
Councilmember Stringham.
Yes, so that fails. Okay,
So
we'll go
now
back.
I will make a motion that we move one merit and one time limited to the budget.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
There we go. Motion and second. All in favor? Well, roll call. Just roll call it.
No, we got this. We got this. There's no nays.
Councilmember Winder Newton,
Aye.
Councilmember Bradley,
Aye.
Could you repeat that?
No.
Well, all that good discussion changed my mind.
Thanks, Jim.
Councilmember Harrison,
No.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord,
Aye.
Councilmember Granado,
Aye.
Councilmember Bradshaw,
Aye.
Councilmember Theodore,
Aye.
Councilmember Stringham.
Aye, that passes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Congrats, Chris.
I just had some comments
That's more than I thought
prior
that would
to
give you.
the departure of
Better
this
than we
agenda
thought.
item.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
Prior to the departure of his
Chris,
particular.
Yeah, I want to weigh in on this a little bit if you don't
Okay.
mind. It's
Perfectly
now
fine.
an
Now
okay
is a great
Okay,
time to do
thank
that.
you,
Let's do
Madam
that.
Chair. So I need to go back and do a more personal review of the most recent audit. I know Darren has a lot of concerns, and this is not on the agenda due to the complexity of our budget season for a week or two. So there'll be more discussion on this particular audit. At that time, I'll have more of a direct opinion. I defer to Darren because I've worked with him so closely and he works for me, right? I will say to the subject, and you all touched on it, which is why I wanted to say a few words. I think that we are very understaffed when it comes to communications, not on my side necessarily, but our county as a whole. It's just how we choose to operate. Well, and we've said it time and time again, a couple of $1 billion business, less pass-through funds, right? So I think that anytime the auditor chooses to use his voice, needs to be very deliberate, and I think it should be inclusive. And I think that we should ask the auditor to be aware that if we're only seeing, I mean, I guess if the auditor is now to on a regular basis issue really favorable audits that really favorable press releases go out, then the public see a lot of really good favorable information coming out. And maybe we need to figure out a way to support communications on that. If we're cherry picking, if he is cherry picking, and in this case, it felt a little bit like a dump on the county for something that I will agree that the auditor and his practices are extremely important to our county. I want it for the reasons that many expressed. You want the thought that an auditor could be coming in to your given operation, whether it's under my portfolio or anybody's portfolio, And the legal requirements for auditing are really important as well. However, so is our AAA bond rating, and the message to our public. We are a very good government, and day in and day out, the auditor has found that. Clearly, anytime you're looking at an employee base as deep as art and a complexity of our government, you're going to find things. But let's put it in context. I think that's one of my biggest concerns. We have to be really careful about the language. We had this discussion earlier today, and I was advised, look, I can't, nor can you, limit the auditor's choice as it moves towards, communicating. But I do believe we need to, each of us, if there's any of us that feels we are in a deep hole around here, then fair enough. But I think time and time again, audits have proven we are a great government. Some audits are, frankly, due to their scope and the legal requirements, a bigger deal than others. So I just felt that this particular communication, if you were an independent, maybe you're somebody looking at our bond ratings, maybe you're a public member just reading, oh, I've never heard from the auditor before, and this seems super, super bad for Salt Lake County. I don't believe that's who we are, and I think there's enough evidence that would agree with my position on this. So I would just ask that we be more aware about impacts and make sure that the choices are made are really wise. And I appreciate the auditor reached back immediately to me. We're going to schedule a meeting with Darren to discuss the specifics in the audit, make sure that any message that needs to be delivered on next steps has been delivered, make sure that we have a chance to respond to you as council and to address what I just expressed, some concerns about how audit findings are communicated beyond Salt Lake County family.
Okay. Would you like to respond to that?
Oh, no, mayor's office has reached out. We have a meeting next Tuesday set up on the books.
Okay, awesome. Okay. All right. I think we're good there. Let's.
Thank you.
So I'd like to return then to the top grouping of the FTE related. And I'm just going to kind of walk through them and then you tell me what you'd like to do. So there's a grant program extension, the SLCo grant program expansion, for 2 time limited. That's a grant. There's the Volkswagen settlement that's going to fund a time-limited sustainability initiative. That's an FTE. There are 2 time limiteds in this is for the animal services mobile unit. They're moving them back now to time-limited positions as opposed to contracting for those services. So if you'll look, you'll see that there's an operation shift of about $265,000, and the difference is the pay raises that were embedded in the mayor's budget. And then finally, there's the 3rd District Court contract expansion for 4 sworn officers. That does not have any county funds associated with it. What would the council like to do?
Can we do
with
those one at a time? Let's start with the court one.
Okay. The start at the bottom and work up?
Yeah, let's
Okay,
start
so
and work up.
there's contract revenue for 4 sworn officers to provide expansion at the 3rd District Court.
Move to approve.
Got a motion, and I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Next.
There are 2 time-limited positions that the service was previously provided by contract. Now we'd like to hire 2 time-limited FTEs to provide veterinarian services associated with animal services mobile unit.
And remind me, are those in the mayor's budget right now currently?
Yes, this is the.
This is the mayor's proposed. So I thought so. I just want to verify.
Move to approve.
Second.
Question.
Go ahead.
So really quick on this, is this a countywide service or is it just those that are subscribing to county for animal control?
It is a general fund because the mobile van goes throughout the county. So it is a countywide service, yes.
How does it support cities that already have their own animal control though?
My understanding is that it goes to those areas that are in most demand, and I don't remember how they determine that.
It's spay and neuter services is what it is. So they're going, and I know that Talia's here, but essentially they identify areas of high intake throughout the county and go there and.
And was this during ARPA? Was this using ARPA funds before?
The unit was bought with ARPA.
It's now general fund money.
The unit being the mobile unit that is the mobile clinic.
Thanks.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second, correct? All right. Any other additional discussion on this one?
Maybe,
Dave,
maybe
go
someone
ahead.
can just help me out here. This one was funded by ARPA and now just be part of our general fund.
Is this TI for the mayor? Oh, it is TI. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know what this one is. Okay. Your motion is to fund it for 2 years or one? Yeah. What's the motion? 2 years or one? It's time limited, but their request was actually for 2 years, not just one. So that's what I'm asking.
And Arlen, didn't we already spend the money to buy the van?
We did, but
The unit was paid for. That, I believe, was
Yes.
ARPA funding that bought the unit. And then it's, I guess, TI for the ongoing, what would have been a contract, but I happen to know the contracted entity went out of the Spanier business, I think.
I'll be honest, I'm uncomfortable going 2 years on the budget that we've currently got. I'm happy to go 1 year and reevaluate that and maybe go another year next time around.
The budget is actually not for a full year in 2026. The budget goes through
For a half a year,
through June.
I know. Or then we would look at a half a year that year.
I'm happy to amend my motion to make it 1 year if people are more amenable to that.
I'd be comfortable with that.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. I have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
I think it sounds like a wonderful program, but I worry about the eternal life of government programs. So I think I'm just going to vote no today. Thank you.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Opposed.
We need a
Is
roll
that-
call
well,
vote.
roll call, please.
Councilmember Bradley,
Jim, did you hear that?
Yeah, I, yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Alvord,
Nay.
Councilmember Harrison,
Yes.
Councilmember Theodore,
Yes.
Councilmember Granado,
Aye.
Councilmember Winder Newton. Councilmember Bradshaw,
Aye.
Councilmember Stewart,
No.
Councilmember Stringham,
Yes. Did we get everybody? Okay. All right, that passes.
So the next item would be for a time limited, and this would be for 3 years, and it would be paid for by the Volkswagen settlement of about $500,000 as a Salt Lake County sustainability initiative with an FTA associated.
Okay, I'm just going to tell the council, somebody else is going to have to take this one because I'm a no. I think I don't want to start any new programs or new initiatives right now while we're in the middle of a difficult budget. And this could be used. I know we supported the buses and the collecting data from that. I have yet to see the data that's come out of that presented to the council. And so I know that there's some additional want to do more with that. I'm not there yet, and I'm not ready to put time limited money into something. I'd rather look at what other options we have for this funding instead of just this. So I'm a no, and I don't know what anybody else wants to do. So
Well, I'll motion approval, recognizing it's the settlement funds. There are only finite uses for those funds, and I think this is a very good use.
I'll second it.
I have a comment. What are the uses for this funds? Can't they just go back in the general fund?
So I'm going to tell you what I think and then ask Bridget to weigh in. So my understanding is that this money would like to be viewed as restricted, but Volkswagen didn't want it to be because that would have admitted some liability. And consequently, these funds are not restricted. The mayor and her staff would like them to be restricted for the use of environmentally related concerns. Is that pretty much it, Bridget?
That's correct. We asked that the use of the funds be restricted so that they would go back to the air quality nexus of the litigation. As I indicated when I spoke with you all previously, the sole reason that Salt Lake County was able to succeed against a preemption claim under the Clean Air Act was the fact that we have our own emission standards. And the hope was that the money would go back into furthering air quality. But when we asked for a restriction placed in the settlement agreement, Volkswagen, as Dave has indicated, would not agree to that because they viewed it as an admission of liability.
So may I make a comment?
Go ahead.
I'm looking back at my notes when we talked about this several weeks ago. It looks like this is a 3-year commitment and then we're done. They've produced a plan and that's it. It's not like there's any concern with, this becoming like a long-term thing. It's just like developing a plan and then they're done. So I don't know if that changes anybody's mind, but, I think having a sustainability plan is a good thing. And if we have somebody who can help convene stakeholders and actually see some things executed, I actually think it's a really good thing for our county.
And Madam Chair, I had initially understood it was like the opioid settlement, which is restricted. But I think to Amy's point, I mean, because we wouldn't have this funding, but for the violation of our environment that they carried out, I still think it makes a lot of sense that we spend it on an environmental purpose.
And I don't have a problem spending on environmental purpose. I just don't feel like the council had an opportunity to weigh in on that at all. So we've been brought one thing without the opportunity of looking at other options. That's all. I mean, that's where I'm at.
If I could, don't we already have a group that's doing the same type of thing? I thought we've already been doing this.
Well, just to weigh in and to answer council members' question just now. Yeah, we do. We have one person looking at energy efficiencies. There's a very specific Rocky Mountain Power program, and we come out ahead on that. And I think prior to me being in this office, we had that position. Couple of points. First of all, yes, Volkswagen settlement, and we as a council, but I as the one who executes litigation, move forward. And we did put time in, and there was community impact on air quality due to the Volkswagen egregious acts. So this is a rollout of that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have seen the opportunity. I'll tell you, anytime I talk to the public, I survey the public, air quality in our community is one of our vital concerns. And one of the challenges of a downward bias of the property tax, and we all know this, with the exception of recent COVID recovery, we haven't had an ability to move to new programs. We just don't. So when I see a window open due to an injustice, we want to move on it. And let me give you one example of the type of thing that Emily will now be doing. Emily's a rock star, first of all. You have to have a strong leader in the office. And by the way, I want to see that data too. They're finally at the point.
Yeah, because we haven't seen that data at all, and it's been a while now.
It's been a bit. So I think we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah. But let me go to the sustainability report. I convened our agencies, departments, and individuals and said, throw out big ideas. We had so many important initiatives that we don't have revenue for, we haven't run with. And that is the mapping of what we can do for future years. Probably, frankly, very little under.
So is this, and let me understand this, this is sustainability within the county itself?
Yes.
Specifically.
And let me give you one example.
Buildings, help me understand that.
So, and I'll turn it to Catherine in case I'm mistaken, like raise your hand if I'm wrong, but what I understood let me give you one example. I went to the Net Zero Library opening not long ago and was blown away. It's the only net zero library in the nation and the first public building in the state to be zero. That means we're not buying off the grid and we're not trading credits or whatever. It literally, and I was blown away by the commitment of staff on site. The reason it's net zero is because they wanted it. They were excited about it, both from the education aspect to the community, but they're doing things that are so important internally with their operations. And it's a fun, unifying goal. And I wanted to actually utilize this funding to almost pivot off of their success and see in every one of our buildings and systems, are we doing the right thing? Another example, from my early days here of a success story is the Salt Palace. There's an investment made after their shows to not just throw everything into our landfill. There's a utilization and a planning, and a lot of these shows come in and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars with setup and staging. Last thing you want is to get a big bulldozer and take it over to our landfill. For a lot of reasons, that's a miss. So they're doing things right. So we have enough examples within our county of big, wide, game-changing success. Those are two. This is Emily's right-hand person to go and discover more internally how we can do things better. Write that plan, and then it'll be up to us in the future to say, not important enough, right? And maybe it won't be, but like, let's see where we can do better. Frankly, I don't think I would have been in a position to advocate for this given our tight budget year, with the exception of the fact that, you know, this seems to be appropriate due to the air quality impacts.
Well, I'm all for appropriate funds to going to the appropriate places. I just didn't fully grasp what it was for and why. I think that's part of why I'm opposed to it and was trying to understand. You're working on me.
Madam Chairman,
Madam
could I
Chair.
take a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
I served on the 2030 Sustainability Project for 3 years. Suzanne followed me onto that board. The Salt Lake County is a huge player in that initiative, and there is so much work. We just did the policy. They're now moving into the actual implementation. And I don't know how Emily could possibly do all that she needs to do by herself. She absolutely needs the support.
So it's my understanding this role would put together a full plan specifically. Okay.
Madam Chair, may I jump in?
Yes,
and in
please.
fact, I would love it if Dina and Emily would come up because they are the subject matter experts on this, and I don't want to misspeak. We are already in the process of working on what we're calling the Sustainability Action Plan. That is a county-wide, and by that I mean internal county, our own facilities, assessing energy efficiency beyond just what the facilities role has played in the past. It's a much more holistic, cohesive, coordinated, get out of your silos so that individual agencies aren't working in sustainability efforts on their own, but we're coordinating it as a whole in order to maximize efficiencies and save costs. That's the idea. It's a massive project, so this would be a time-limited person to support that effort. Dina, what else can you add?
Just 2 quick things that I can add.
Okay.
For me, this is not only sort of echoing everything that the mayor and Catherine have said, but this is an efficiency. For me, this brings efficiency to this process. The summit that the mayor convened indicated to us that there's like 16 agencies that are thinking about EV chargers. There are other agencies that are thinking about solid waste. And recycling. So for me, we've asked the question of all agencies at the county to say, what are you doing? Right now, what I can tell you is those efforts are being duplicated in each one of those agencies. So for me, this is a really straightforward efficiency issue. Get one person that's going to talk to all of those agencies, listen to what their needs are, and then begin to focus our plan to see how the county can respond. Right now, we're duplicating efforts and it's a waste. So I would say the efforts of the individual agencies are not a waste. The fact that we've got every agency asking the same questions about sustainability is wasteful. It's wasting a lot of time. So that, and then just in the spirit of sort of understanding the impact on the budget, this line item is 0.006 of the $2 billion budget per year. And I think I've already made it clear at our budget meeting, we eliminated 6 FTEs that were time limited because the grants ended. So I don't have a track record of extending time limited jobs to be sort of the legacy government sort of funding that you've talked about. So I think we've established a track record in ORD that we understand how to take advantage of these. These wouldn't be in our budget except for, the mayor said, the injustices that were perpetrated by VW. So we really think this is an incredibly efficient and will be an extremely valuable resource to bring to county operations.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second, correct? All right, any additional discussion? All right, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Would you repeat the motion? Is it to fund this?
The motion was
unlimited?
to approve as recommended.
Okay.
Councilmember Alvord,
I think I'm a nay. I just think we should help the general fund. So I'm a nay.
Councilmember Winder Newton.
Aye.
Councilmember Bradshaw.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrison.
Yes.
Councilmember Theodore.
Sorry, I'm on the fence on this one actually, because I feel like really we should put it in our general fund. I know I believe in sustainability and I believe in the effort and I appreciate all that, but I'm having a hard time here. I feel like we're duplicating a lot of the things that we're trying to do already that Emily's maybe trying to do. And so I don't know. I don't know. Since it is a grant, it's a grant, right?
No, it's not.
It's from a lawsuit, the
Related to
settlement. That's right. Since it's a settlement, I'll say yes, but I don't like it, just so you know.
Councilmember Stewart.
Reluctant, yes.
I'm definitely a no. Fiscally conservative. I think we need the funds in the general fund. That's what's been argued up to this point anyhow.
Councilmember Bradley.
Yes.
Councilmember Granado.
Yes.
Councilmember Stringham.
I know I had 3 very good speeches. I guess I'm a reluctant yes, I guess like D at this point. We'll see how it goes. But I do want to reevaluate it at the end of the year if that's okay and see where we've gotten.
Yes, and we will get you the results on the
Please. No. End of 25.
Before then, we will get you results on the mobile
Matter
bus
of fact,
program.
next year's budget for 26, make sure this is on the list. Just kidding. I just want to hear what it did.
We forget, you know, a year goes by and we're like, brain dead. Just kidding.
You don't always forget.
Sometimes, I know. We won't, this one.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Okay, and then the last item is the Continuum of Care grant for a time limit, for 2 time-limited positions. But again, it is a grant and it's an expansion.
Yeah, I'm happy to approve that one, so I'll move the motion on that one. Motion in a second. Any additional discussion on this one? This one's being paid for by the grant that's coming in. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Okay.
Okay, so I'm moving then down to flood control. This is in anticipation if MSD terminates its contract for 2 FTEs.
Yes, so so I'm going to tee this one up really quickly. The MSD is going to be transferring Public Works Engineering over. In order for us to be able to manage that changeover, we need to actually keep 2 FTEs here on our side to be able to continue the work that needs to stay with the county. And we will continue working with them on other things. So flood control stays, but Public Works Engineering, most of that will be moving over to the MSD sometime in January is what it looks like at this point. Are we looking at mid-January now or end of January?
For the transition?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's actually early January.
Early
The
January.
the
So we're
lease-
moving back up again.
I think so. The transfer from the space might have been gotten.
The transfer from space has been knocked back a little
Yeah.
bit. I think that's February, but I think the transition for them is January now, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So we do need to approve 2 full-time positions for this now in Public Works Engineering so that we can continue to operate that on the county side as well. So
Move to approve.
got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Can I just make a comment that
Yeah, go ahead.
flood control is a statutory duty of county government, so it's kind of an essential thing. So there you go.
Yep, it is. Okay.
So the Public Health Infrastructure Grant is providing sufficient funds for another time-limited FTE, and it's a billing specialist and IT roadmap, and it's time-limited.
Right. And that's covered by the grant as well, correct?
All of it, yep.
All of it. All right.
Move to approve.
Okay, I got a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
And then in the, continuing in the health department, there's about $132,000 of fee revenues, growth in fee revenues that will cover the personnel costs and about 1/5 of the operating costs for this food protection program.
Can I ask Kelly some questions on that food protection program real quick? Kelly, there you go.
Hi.
On the food protection program, how is that different than what we're already doing?
So what's happening is there are increases in our restaurants and places that need to be inspected. And so as you approved, or we discussed in the last meeting, is that we increased the fees, and part of fee revenue from that increase will help pay for this new position to be able to get, more right-size the number of inspectors that we have compared to the actual number of restaurants and other food facilities that need inspected.
Okay.
So it's
And
not
this-
a new
this
program. The
also
program
includes-
is ongoing. It's a new FTE to support the ongoing food protection.
This also includes food trucks and the facilities that they work out of as well too, the prep kitchens. Okay, thank you. So, go ahead.
I would like to move to approve, and I spent a day with one of the Salt Lake County restaurant inspectors during medical school as one of our rotations, and it was one of my most memorable days in medical school. I just have a huge respect for what they do in protecting the public and also protecting employees that work in these small businesses. So I think it's very important.
And I'd like to stress how important it was for 44 years of being on the other side of the inspection. It's critical.
You know firsthand.
I know exactly what.
If I could add,
For restaurants.
if I could add to that, one of the most important contributing factors that they do is educate.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the education component of the work that they do is critical for the success of these businesses. And so it really is a multi-level service to the community overall.
And this is probably not part of that program exactly, but a shoot off of it. I know when we do special events, they're very good at working with our special event vendors who have food related things. And we do major training. We work with them. We make sure that they understand what the rules are. And we work with our events as well to make sure that they understand what those rules are. And then they're on site every day of that event to make sure people are following those rules. And I can't tell you how impressive it's been, how well they work with the people that are there, and how on top of them they are if they're not following the rules too. So that's been really impressive. So
thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second on this one. Have we gone that far? I'm forgetting where we're at. Yeah, that's what I thought. So there's my motion and a second. I thought so. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
So the next two positions were already approved by the council, in my opinion. Do you want to revisit them? That's the Arts and Culture Booking Coordinator and the time-limited archivist that was paid for by the mayor's finance.
Yeah, I think those are already taken care of,
Okay.
so. Okay, let's move on.
Dave, don't cue up
What would you're certainly I can speak to it. And so in my list, there's an indentation here that you would like to take an opportunity to introduce some budget-related items.
Yep, I would. Okay. So because of the budgets, and I know I've had this conversation with a number of people over the last couple of months, and and especially now that the bond didn't pass and things, the council has had the intention of being able to take a look at the all of the contras from last time and didn't have the intention of restoring all of those, I think, at some point. Well, at least I know some of us did not. And because they were restored by the mayor's office, we've now looked at other ways of being able to look at cuts in this budget. And so I'm actually proposing that we're going to be looking at taking some of the stress tests this year. And so we're going to go through that little by little and talk about who we're looking to take the stress test on, how much we're looking at. It's a percentage that we're looking at taking and what sides. And some of these we're looking at taking it from a side of the organization and not the whole organization. So, and I think I will just, I think I'm going to break it down into pieces and we'll just do it in sections. So under Mayor's County Services, we're looking at doing a 1% stress test in the library services. We're looking at doing 2% in the Human Services Department. We're looking at doing 0% in Office of Convention and Visitor Services. We're looking at 2% in Office of Homelessness and Criminal Justice Reform. And we're looking at 2% in the Mayor's Administration. That is the first section I'm going to speak to right now. The rest of the Community Services Department, we are looking at a 0%. It was clear that through the ZAP and the funding there and working with them, a lot of that was covered in with Parks and Rec
getting that 45% from TRCC was really important, and keeping that balance, not to touch that at all, and we make sure that we have the funding there. A lot of these bring in some additional incomes, and the revenue streams have been pretty good, and so we looked at all of those things. So I want you to know that we actually went through the budgets and looked closely at those things when we were looking at that. Library services, we've got a lot of budgetary issues coming up in repairs and building and construction coming up. And if we don't start looking at some tightness of the belt, we're going to look at a tax increase again here pretty soon. So we want to make sure that we are staying on top of that.
Do you have a list, or could you repeat that? Because I
Yes, happy to.
wasn't able to write it all down.
Okay. Community Services Department, the only place we're looking at a cut there is a 1% library services.
Okay.
Okay. Human Services Department, 2% in the countywide human services. And then, and we will not be touching anything that is grant funded. So that would be outside the grant funding on that. Office of Homeless and Criminal Justice Reform, 2%, and Mayor's Administration is 2%. And that's under county services. And I'm going to go ahead and just stop right there. We'll go into the next section in a second, but I'm going to make the motion to make those cuts, and I'm looking for a second.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
If I could just comment why I think this makes sense. This budget has not revealed a lot of cuts, but as someone who's run two businesses, I know there's always, especially something modest like 2%, there's always efficiencies and cuts to be found. I think 2% is very reasonable. The other thing was that when we requested the contra savings from last year, most of those were in personnel. And so I didn't see a demonstration that they were looking over their other expenditures and looking for efficiencies there. So that's why I'm happy to support this motion, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And then I'm also going to give a caveat. If there is a place where it actually affects your ability to do your duty as you need by law, please bring it back to the council, because that is not our intent in this. We're just trying to keep a fiscally conservative hold on to the budget right now. And where there needs to be budgetary adjustments from one category to another, happy to do that. We will look at each one of those as we go throughout this budget cycle, and happy to look at the appropriating those so that we can make those adjustments. Yes, go ahead.
I just have some questions. So
Go ahead.
When you say 2% or 1% of library services, are you talking about 1% of their total budget? Or are you talking about 1% of operations? So are they to cut both personnel and operations?
Right now it's personnel and operations.
So it is both?
Yes.
Okay. And so do you have a number, or are we just, I mean, because there's all sorts of things.
It's
that
1%
go
of the mayor's budget that she's proposed in these areas. So.
Okay, and then like, so when who's going to take away the
Basically,
grants?
it's the stress test that they've given us. We're looking at that.
Okay, so the stress test was of county funding.
Okay, then that's what we're looking at, is that 1%. Basically, it's 20% of your stress test is what we're looking at, or 40%, depending on if it's the 1% or 2%. Does that make sense?
No.
No.
The stress test is 5%.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, let me.
20% of the 5% or
40% of the 5% is 2%.
Can I just say,
2 percentage.
I'm concerned that it's not clear what is being proposed, and it's also feels a little bit like shooting from the hip, in that it's unclear exactly what you're asking. And I just am concerned about making these types of, by the seat of our pants is what it feels like. It's the first time hearing of it on the last day to make changes when there's been months and months and months of work leading into this. I feel like it should be more deliberate and thoughtful.
Well, it has
just
been
concerned
deliberate and
about the
thoughtful on my end. I'm going to be pretty blunt. We've spent the last couple of weeks wrapped up in other issues that have taken a lot of time from the council instead of the budget. I'm not happy about that, but it is what it is. I have done quite a bit of research. We're looking at, and maybe I need to clarify, we're looking at the stress test. Each entity gives us a stress test. So instead of taking 5% of the stress test, we're asking to take 2% of your stress test. That's what we're talking about.
The problem is, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, when we go through reviewing, hours after hours, hundreds of hours between Darren and Rod, I attend some of those deliberations and others. Stress tests for one organization versus another can be very different, especially like the larger operations in many respects, depending on what they serve. So I don't want to generalize, but it's sometimes easier. Some of the stress test is basic fundamental governance issues, not like, hey, we want to do this. I mean, that's what concerns me is like, if we're not able, I mean, if you want to go down this road, I would suggest the council find a way to take a couple of additional days and we will go back to those budgets. We'll review them together. We'll allow the operators to come in and talk about consequences, because I think the big challenge for us, and I would share generally some of Councilmember Harrison's requests, like you don't know where you're really forcing deep service cuts to organizations by these blanket cuts, because every organization is incredibly different here at Salt Lake County. And I fear at this stage the across the board cuts. I mean, we are ready by just moving the budget forward that I did running, I always use that phrase, but truly running on fumes right now. And we're also doing some bold things around HR initiatives that you have asked us to do that we're looking at right now. There's a morale component, there's staffing challenges right now, and we can never pay people enough, especially so I think all of these factors are really, really important for you to take into consideration. And I think most importantly is the work that Rod and Darren did recently to show that the cuts every year, just by the fact we're not keeping our heads above water on the operations side due to inflationary pressures. So I think we're going even deeper than last year, even though, we temporarily created a method to kind of hold back. So I guess I would hope that we could go into additional budget deliberations if we want to go down this road.
And I don't mind going into additional discussions because we have time between now and when we actually approve the final budget for this. But I think my frustration, honestly, is I've been trying to discuss this for almost 2 months now. I brought it up at every one of our caucus meetings. Instead, we've been talking about the council budget, and that's all we were willing to talk about. We weren't willing to talk about the issue of we're looking at a tax increase if we can't get our budget reined in. We as a council said we wanted to look at cutting our budgets and reining them in a little bit and being able to restore some of those contras and choosing not to restore some of the contras. And as we were looking at that, we have not had the opportunity to really dig into that. I proposed an opportunity to do that next year and go through that budget cycle and do that as a whole. This council was not interested in doing that. So I'm proposing some cuts that I'm willing to come back and look at with each of the different administrations. If they're too far or too deep or whatever, I'm happy to look at that. But I wanted to have that discussion. And the only way to have that discussion is to pass this. That's what I'm finding right now. With this council, that's where I'm at. Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate your hard work and diligence in looking at this. I will tell you one of the things that is concerning to me, and I appreciate that the mayor and everyone here has done a really good job of trying to limit their budget. We didn't have a tax increase on the table. Everybody's doing more with less. And one of the things that I think we have to address as a council is, what do we want to provide as far as services or programs for the county? And until we answer that, it's really hard to say to the county employees, hey, we want you to do all of these things, and we want more parks and trails, and we want this HR study, and we want, to increase whatever, increase public safety and all of these different things. But then when we come back and nickel and dime them on how they can actually execute it, I think that we're not being fair. I think what we need to do is look at what are we providing as a county, and statutorily, what are we responsible for? And then what do Salt Lake County residents expect of us? And then figure out from there, like if there's specific programs that we're involved in that maybe we shouldn't be, that's when we start making cuts or looking at how to shift priorities. What I don't want to do, and I'll tell you, the auditor conversation helped me to realize some of this. When we start making departments do so cut back so much, we run the risk of increasing our audit findings because they are short-staffed. We have one example in Megan's shop where an assistant fiscal manager had to be cut because we were scaling back. And there were some issues found there with the audit. And I just think we've got to make sure we're not, we're cutting in the right places. And to me, to not be willing to roll back programs or specific things that we've asked these people to do, but sit and nickel and dime them, I just don't think that's the right way to go about it, especially in such a general way. Like, I'm fine to make cuts for specific things that we don't think we should be doing, but to just do across the board types of things, I just don't think that's a responsible way for us to make budgetary decisions.
Asking them to find a percentage is not an irresponsible way, especially when we're looking at a stress test.
Who
Okay,
do you
hold
want
on
to
a
hear from
second.
first?
I can't remember who I told first.
Suzanne was
Suzanne first, and then Dave.
Well, and I think that the intent, I totally agree with figuring out how we can be as fiscally responsible as possible. And now that we're going to be literally wall-to-wall cities, what role, what are our priorities, what are our statutory obligations as a regional government are so important. And I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, maybe having some sort of retreat with, I don't know what sort of noticing public meetings, whatever would be required, but to be able to talk about what are the most important things that we could do in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that would help drive what cuts could we make, or what services should we be doing, and which ones are maybe not our role as a regional government.
Go ahead.
Hey, I think you have good intentions here, and I do like the direction that you're going, because with the council office, we made some big cuts. It was hard, and people are mad, and it is what it is. But it's our fiscal duty to do this, and so I'm always looking for ways to cut. And yeah, it's hard sometimes, and I do like your idea, Lori, but I think it's freaking people out. And so
everything we do freaks people out these days.
But here's what I'm saying. Here's the thing. I do like what Amy said. I mean, we do have a lot of programs that maybe that's where we need to start and have every department this year. And I would even pass legislative intent to say, hey, let's look at all these programs. What's being duplicated? What's duplicate? I can't even say the word. What's being duplicated? What can we do with that? What is the state doing that we're doing? What can we get rid of? I know there were some things even with the Meals on Wheels program where they were having the drivers that the state does, and where we could cut that out. And so I think there's a lot of things that we could do that way. So, I mean, I would actually make a motion to pass legislative intents for every department this year to start looking through their programs and see where we can find those cuts. Again, if you want to move forward with this, that's fine. But I think it's got everyone a little uneasy, and I know disrupting the system is sometimes good, but at the same time, I want to be reasonable.
But part of the reason why we have the stress test on there is it is a tool that we can use and look at when we need to make cuts. That is the reason why it is there.
Can I ask a question to that in regards to what you're motioning? Because I have understood that the stress test are departments identifying specific areas within their budget that if this percentage cut was imposed, this is what they would do. Are you specifically suggesting that they utilize those items on their stress test as part of these percentage cuts? I guess I'm just trying to understand.
I'm looking at this
stress test in your motion.
Yeah, the reference to the stress test is, I took a look at, if we were to cut percentages from their budget, what items would they take? I'm looking at those things and saying, can you give us 2% out of those items that, we're at what you've said for your 5% stress test, we're asking for 2% for some, 1% for others. Some of them I'm asking for 0. So those are the things that we're looking at right now.
I mean, I guess just an observation. I mean, it almost seems like then we've wasted the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks of budget sessions, since some of the items that we have probably specifically approved may not be the top priority of an agency that has to take a 2% cut at this point in time. I mean, it really remakes the way that the agencies are going to approach their budget if you're putting in place kind of an overall cut. I mean, I think if what you're suggesting is really the start point of a budget discussion and not something brought up when we feel like we're near the end, because so many of the decisions that we made, even just today, going back weeks, may quite very well be moot now. based off.
Not according to what I was looking at. When we were looking at it, it looked like everything that we'd approved could still be done without taking, because it's a 5% stress test they gave us.
But I think when agencies are looking at stress tests, I mean, also, I know that we often talk about cuts and we're looking at the mayor's proposed budget and what can be cut. But what we generally aren't talking about are the millions and millions of dollars of requests that the mayor already turned down that agencies may have felt were a very high priority, but already were not recommended. The stress test, as I've always understood it, is where are they going to take off of their base budget?
That's exactly what I'm talking
Well,
about.
sure, but for especially agencies where maybe we've made the decision over the last 3 weeks to add to their base budget based off of our deliberations, that may not be their top priority now if you're telling them they've got to start on these stress test items, because it shifts the whole dynamic and definitely shifts their approach to their priorities within their budget. So if we want to restart the budget process over the next 10 days, sure. But I don't think you can say that everything we've approved over the last 4 weeks is still, the proper decision if they have to start cutting things off of that list now. Because I don't think that's where most of the agency managers are going to land. That's just how I would view it.
I'll just comment, in the private sector, you could tell marketing, you get 10% less this year. And they go, yes, sir. And they figure it out. I'm just telling you, 2% is very modest. Every organization knows what they can cut. They can make it work. The county will still be here. And we may not have to raise taxes next year. So I think it can happen. Everyone knows how to do it.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
could I reply? As much as I've enjoyed my recent association with the council member, I completely disagree for a couple of reasons. One is the downward bias of the property tax makes us lose every year. Some, based on the last tax increase, we're eating down every year. Then you look at the inflationary pressure of recent years, which we all know about. It's been high. And then you look at, to the point that Arlen just made, these agencies are coming in. And it's heartbreaking if you go through the hours and hours that we have to look at the things that are so critical, including things like IT subscriptions. We brought you budgets where we're not even paying for those subscriptions. Okay. Well, and I don't know because.
Well, and maybe I should go through the list. But
yeah, and that's fair. But I do think that there's a discipline to, and I get that, and you've heard my speech already on the work that's been done. I compliment those of you who want to go a different way, and I agree with you. However, I'm not sure we should be penalizing divisions and departments because council's been preoccupied. That seems like a really short-sighted way to run a
Well, I
large
don't feel like I'm
organization.
penalizing. I feel like I'm actually doing my due diligence and cutting and shaving a little bit off the top of the budget. And I don't feel like I'm doing it in a situation. I have actually looked
Can
at
I
what we've
finish?
already, yeah, but I'm just, okay.
Okay, let me finish, if you don't mind. It to me feels that way because that's what you just said. You said, guys, we've been preoccupied. We didn't get to that. I agree with Arlen. If you guys can come back the next few days, I will too. Probably not Thanksgiving, but tomorrow and Friday, I'll be here, and Saturday, I'll make the time. Let's go back and let's look at what you're doing, because I think Darren can attest to this. So can my deputy mayors to the left of me. We are running on fumes. I'm using that stupid analogy again. We're already down to very, very, very tight budgets. So I don't think that comparison of 10% we're not there. We haven't had the volatility of some great business years. We can't do that with the way we collect revenue. We're not all of a sudden, woohoo, look what we're building. We just had a major sale like you see in the private sector. It's just not the tools that we're given by the legislature to run our government. So if we had a different method to our property tax structure, if we hadn't been hit so hard by inflation, if over the years we had been, I think it's a compliment to us that we're having this robust discussion because we are incredibly good at what we do. It's just that the public wants a service from us. At some point, I had a lot of work done by one council member. It's a good request. It says if we could extend hours at a rec center or 2 or 3, we're looking at demand from community to do more. I've already gone back and said, nope, I'm sorry. I mean, and now we're saying, not only did the mayor say, I'm really, really sorry, but now you're saying the mayor's really, really sorry, and now we're going to go 2% more. And that's where I really feel like, and honestly, when we get to some of the transformational, we're willing to make an adjustment to provide a million plus to back to those of you who are really looking for the cut. We're going to offer one today. But I just think this across the board without bringing the slides back up is a disservice to the people delivering our services.
And I think I need to clarify something. I have been digging into this whole time. I've not been able to engage my council members during that time because they were engaged in something else. So I have actually done due diligence. I've been digging through the budgets. I have been looking at these things, which is why some of them are at 0, some of them are at 1%, some of them are at 2%. Right? I have actually been going through that and making sure that I am trying not to do that and comparing it to what we've already done here as well. Anything that we've added into the budget, it won't touch any of that. We're not taking any of that away, and that won't even count against it. So I'm going to make sure that's very clear. We're just looking at the amounts that we were given in the stress test, and that is what we're taking it against. That is what I'm looking at right now.
Lori, would you propose the ones that you're not asking for?
Yeah, I'm just going to, here's what I'm going to
very
do.
important.
The ones that we're not asking for any on is Community Services Department with the exception of the library. Office of Convention and Visitor Services, Public Works and Municipal Services Department, Mayor's Finance, Administrative Services Department, Assessor, Auditor Tax Admin, the Clerk, Justice Courts, and IT is one of the big ones. That's in admin, yep.
Well, I want to stress IT.
Yes. And then anything that's under the tax admin, we're not looking at those specifically. Human services, yes.
I'm just anticipating a level of support, and I wonder if there could be a vague motion where it's to advance the concept of a stress test cut for this year budget, and that you circulate that list over the next week or two.
I mean, work with everybody on
and
it.
that it be voted on. It'd be interesting to hear in this group if there's any appetite for a stress test cut.
Okay, well, let's do that.
So Mitch, how do I motion that? I motion that we give preliminary support to some stress test cut as will be determined at the final budget adoption. Does that sound like a good motion?
Certainly it's a motion. Let me just let me just suggest one thing that may help bring clarity, or it might not. So what the council needs to accomplish by the end of the day today is to place a recommended budget on display that the public can interact with. And we've previously set the budget hearing to occur on the 10th. That's the last day it can statutorily occur. And the council needs to conclude its business on that date in terms of approving a final budget based, there may be cuts from what's been recommended or what's been discussed hitherto. But at the end of the day today, the council fiscal staff needs to have enough information to put out a schedule of tables so that the public can interact with the document.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So my question though here is, and maybe it's a point of order or something, I don't know. But you put a motion up, it was seconded by Dave, and we've never voted on the motion. So I think we need to at least vote on the motion, and then we can talk about what the next steps look like. Sorry.
So you're calling the question.
Yeah, I'm calling the question.
All right.
The motion was Laurie doing the 2% stress test, and that was seconded by Dave.
So the motion was specifically on certain things, and
We need to see the exact detail because it's not 2%.
on everything.
It's not 2% across the board, and you can't vote.
I'm just saying the motion was there and seconded, and I never saw a vote. So, but I'm saying there was a motion. Sorry, Mayor Wilson, I apologize, but this is our meeting. I'm just calling the point of order. There was a motion. If there was a problem with the motion, I didn't see it ever opened up, and I never saw it voted on. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
It never got
We're
voted
in
on. Whether it goes either way.
Can we have discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, we also never called the question. I think we're.
No, we have not called the
Well,
question.
and so that's what I'm trying to do now is
You
just
just called the question, but
I think we
I'll let
can't-
you speak
We
and
can't
then-
make, yeah, we can't make any kind of a decision until we see the specifics.
I called the question though. I did.
we please restate the original motion that you made, Madam Chair,
Yes.
and then have a roll call vote on that?
Let me do that right now.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be
you're
rude,
prob-
but
no
I
problem.
want to get us through this. I'm tired. I want to.
We all are. You know, I'll make the full motion for the whole thing so you can hear it. If you're okay to second the full amount, then you can decide from there forward. So
Let me hear it.
here's what we're looking at. For community services, 0% with the exception of 1% for the libraries. For human services, 2%. For Office of Conventions and Visitor Services, 0%. Office of Homelessness and Criminal Justice Reform, 2%. Mayor's Administration, 2%. Public Works and Municipal Services Department, 0%. Office of Regional Development, 2%. Mayor's Financial Administration, 0%. Administrative Services Department, 0%. Human Resource Division, 0%. Assessor, 0%. Auditor, 1%, but not on the tax administration. That's 0%. Clerk, 0%. Council has already decimated their count, their thing. We're not touching that one right now. District Attorney, 2%. Justice Court, 0%. Recorder, 2%. Sheriff, 2%. Surveyor, only on this, not on the tax admin, but 2% on the other. And treasurer, 1%. As long as it's not on the tax admin side.
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I'll second your motion, Laurie.
I'm just really concerned about the approach here. And like I said, I'm all for looking at a longer term plan and streamlining, seeing what we should be doing longer term as a regional government. But I just want to give you a couple examples of human services that would be potentially cut. We're talking mental health services for kids, shelter and emergency care for youth services for our children, adult and aging services, potentially, Meals on Wheels, juvenile defense. Like, these are not like things that are, partisan or, a waste of money. These are some of our most vulnerable brothers and sisters, and these services are vital. And I'm really concerned that on the last day of our budget negotiations, this is when this is getting brought up. I just think it's really concerning and dangerous, and I'm not supportive.
All right, we'll call the question. So I have a motion and a second. Question is called just now. Will you do a roll call vote, please?
Can I make a comment real quick?
Yep, go ahead.
So, I said I like your idea, right? But
The question's been called.
Yeah.
Can I just make a comment?
Just to be technical, in terms of calling, that's a separate motion to call the question. Then
Okay.
that's non-debatable, and if that's approved, then we proceed immediately to vote. Just to be
Yeah, and I
All right.
called the question.
Let's go.
So is there a second to that motion to call the
Second.
question?
Okay, there's a question, call the question. All right.
So that's non-debatable. So this would be a vote on a motion to call the question.
All right, all in favor of calling the question? Aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, that passes. Then we do a roll call vote.
Yeah, who is the second on calling the question?
Me.
Thanks. Okay, roll call vote for the motion. Councilmember Bradshaw,
Nay.
Councilmember Theodore,
I'm going to vote no because I think there's good intentions, but I think this is something, if you want to bring it back, Mayor said she's willing to talk to you and discuss it. She hasn't had a chance to do that yet. So I think you guys should have that conversation, or anybody else that wants to have that conversation, and just see where it's at. So for now, I'm a no, but I think you have the opportunity to bring this back if you wish.
Councilmember Winder Newton.
Before I vote, just want to say, Laurie, I admire your work ethic and I love what you're doing and that you're trying to find ways to solve problems. I'm going to vote no, but I will commit to you that next year we'll work on getting that retreat in place where we can dive in and really look at what our priorities should be as a county. And I think there we'll be able to find some ways to reallocate resources.
We've been trying to do that for 4 years.
I've
That's
never
my
been
first-
to a retreat once.
No, we've been trying to have.
I know,
this
but I'm just
discussion.
saying, I think we've got to do it with all of the policymakers from the executive.
Don't
branch, so
disagree.
Thank you.
Let's do it.
Councilmember Bradley,
Jim, that was you.
On the motion, no.
Okay.
Councilmember Alvord,
I'm for 98% of everything Suzanne said. Just, I want to cut 2% of it. So I'm a aye. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart?
Aye.
Councilmember Harrison?
No.
Councilmember Granado?
I'm an aye because I'm asking them to take a much deeper look at deferred maintenance. That has been ignored and ignored and ignored. We continue to build and we don't maintain what we've got.
Councilmember Stringham?
Yes.
4-5 bills.
Does it fail or does it pass?
I have 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4. I have
Yeah.
5 nays.
5 nays, okay. Okay, got it. Thank you. All right, next.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? I think everybody needs a good 5-minute break to run to the restroom, get a drink and stuff. Let's do that. Can everybody be back here by, let's see, what time is it right now? Yeah, no kidding. 5 minutes. Everybody make 5 minutes, let's be back.
Let's just put up some palm trees and be at a retreat right now. And make those cuts.
I have your statutory list. You have a survey. What's their expectation? It is important. You stated it with regards to.
Are they gonna, is next year's budget gonna be a tax increase?
I'm not. We're done.
She's got a fresh floor, she can do it
I
now.
think with all the problem you have with inflation pressures, costs, and then more of the dollar strong. Do you know how little it is hard? Especially with that. Unless we decide we're not gonna fund Meals on Wheels, or we're
But
not
if
gonna
you,
be in the rec
if
center
you put me in charge
business.
of Meals on Wheels, I'll find you.
It would affect your class, and I could work over there.
Yeah.
Go find out right
Use
now.
like the department head, I'll get you 2%.
All right, well, I will try.
I always want to know what I'm I don't ever want to let somebody else just say, it's just like.
Well,
I'm good.
I know that I've also been part of the reason why things delay. So I need to understand that.